Hi guys. The wooden door stands barely 5 feet tall, its planks swollen with moisture and bound by iron bands that have rusted to the color of dried blood. Heavy oak, hewn from trees that grew when kings were different names, and borders meant something else entirely. The door fits poorly in its stone frame, gaps visible even in the dim light that filters through the single window across the room. Wind finds every imperfection, every warped edge, every place where wood has shrunk away from stone. The sound it makes is constant, a low whistle that rises and falls like breathing, like the village itself drawing air through its wounds. Beyond this door lies a world where winter means something entirely different than the controlled climates we know today. Imagine a world where the temperature dropping to 40 degrees below zero was not an inconvenience to be solved with a turn of a dial, but a season-long battle for survival that required every scrap of knowledge passed down through generations. The door is the first line of defense, but it is far from the last. The cottage interior reveals itself slowly as your eyes adjust. Stone walls rise from an earthen floor, their surfaces blackened by decades of smoke and cooking fires. The ceiling disappears into shadows above rough-hewn beams, each timber selected not for beauty, but for its ability to bear weight and resist the endless cycle of freezing and thawing that splits lesser wood. In the corner farthest from the door, a stone hearth dominates the space, its opening large enough for a person to step inside, though such luxury of space comes at the cost of efficiency in heating. The scrape of metal on stone, rhythmic, deliberate, the sound of a blade being sharpened echoes from somewhere in the darkness above. Not a weapon, but a tool essential for survival, being prepared for the work that dawn will bring. Each stroke against the whetstone is measured, practiced, the motion of hands that have performed this task countless times through countless winters. The blade will cut wool, trim rushes, scrape hides, and perform a dozen other tasks that mean the difference between warmth and freezing in the months ahead. Wool becomes the foundation of survival when temperatures plummet beyond the reach of fire alone. Not the soft, processed wool of modern textiles, but the coarse, oily fleece that still carries the scent of the sheep that grew it. This wool retains its natural lanolin, the waxy coating that repelled rain and snow when it protected the animal. The lanolin makes the wool feel almost greasy to the touch, but this natural oil creates a barrier that water cannot penetrate, and more importantly, it traps air in countless tiny pockets throughout the fiber. The process of preparing wool for winter wear begins long before the cold arrives. Women gather in the late summer to clean the fleeces, not by washing away all the natural oils as modern processing does, but by removing only the dirt and debris while preserving as much lanolin as possible. They work outside, spreading the wool on wooden frames and beating it with willow switches, allowing the wind to carry away dust and bits of vegetation, while the precious oils remain locked in the fibers. Spinning comes next, but not the fine, even threads that create smooth cloth. Winter wool is spun thick and loose, maintaining the loft that traps warm air. The thread that emerges from the spindle looks rough and uneven, full of slubs and thick spots that would be considered flaws in finer work. But these irregularities create pockets of air, and air heated by body warmth becomes the true insulation that keeps life flowing through fingers and toes when the world outside turns deadly. The weaving produces cloth unlike anything found in modern stores. Thick, dense, and so coarse it would be uncomfortable against skin accustomed to processed fabrics. But this cloth serves a different purpose than comfort. When worn in layers, it creates a system of insulation that can maintain body heat even when the air temperature drops low enough to freeze breath before it leaves the lungs. The outer layer sheds wind and snow. The middle layer traps warm air, and the inner layer, often made from softer wool or linen, protects the skin while still allowing the system to function. Layering becomes an art form when survival depends on it. The process begins with a linen shift, long and loose, that serves as the foundation. Over this goes a woolen kirtle, fitted close to the body, but not tight enough to compress the fabric and destroy its insulating properties. A surcoat follows, longer and looser, creating airspace between the layers. Finally, a heavy woolen cloak completes the system, its hood designed to protect the head and neck where so much body heat escapes. The feet require special attention, as frozen toes can mean death within hours in severe cold. Shoes are leather, but not the thin, flexible leather of modern footwear. These are thick, almost rigid constructions that serve more as shells than as comfortable coverings. Inside the shoes, layers of wool felt provide insulation, while wool stockings, often 2 or 3 pairs worn together, create the warm environment that keeps circulation flowing to the extremities, cold, sharp, biting exposed skin like teeth. The sensation of winter air at 40 below zero is unlike anything experienced in heated homes. It burns the nostrils with each breath, freezes moisture in the eyes until vision blurs, and finds every gap in clothing with the persistence of water finding cracks in stone. But humans adapt, and in the adaptation comes knowledge that passes from parent to child, like a precious inheritance. As evening approaches and the pale winter sun disappears behind snow-laden clouds, the cottage transforms into something that serves multiple purposes beyond simple shelter. The hearth becomes not just a source of heat, but the center of a carefully orchestrated system of survival that will carry the family through the long hours until dawn. The fire itself requires constant attention, not just to maintain heat, but to ensure that every piece of fuel burns as efficiently as possible when wood is precious, and mistakes can be fatal. Storytelling emerges as the temperature drops and darkness settles over the village like a heavy blanket. This is not entertainment in the modern sense, but a vital component of survival that serves purposes far beyond simple amusement. When families gather close to the fire, pressed together for warmth with children nestled between adults and elderly grandparents positioned nearest the heat source, the stories that emerge carry the accumulated wisdom of generations who have survived winters just as brutal as this one. The storyteller, often the oldest member of the household, begins with tales that seem simple on the surface, but carry deeper meanings understood by all who listen. A story about a foolish young man who ventured out in a blizzard becomes a lesson about reading weather signs and understanding when conditions are too dangerous for travel. The tale of a woman who saved her family by rationing grain through a harsh winter teaches careful resource management and the importance of planning ahead when abundance seems secure. These stories serve multiple purposes in the survival of the group. They pass along practical knowledge in a form that is memorable and engaging, ensuring that crucial information survives from one generation to the next, even when literacy is rare and written records are non-existent. A child listening to a story about recognizing the signs of frostbite is learning medical knowledge that could save lives, but the lesson is wrapped in narrative that makes it stick in memory far better than simple instruction would. The rhythm and repetition of storytelling also serve a psychological purpose during the long, dark months when isolation and cold can drive people to despair. The familiar cadences of well-known tales provide comfort and stability, creating a sense of continuity that connects the present moment to the past and future. When the wind howls around the cottage walls and the fire burns low, the human voice speaking ancient words becomes an anchor that holds the family together against the chaos of the storm outside. Stories also serve as a form of time management during the endless winter nights. Without clocks or artificial lighting, the passage of time can become distorted and disorienting. A skilled storyteller knows how to pace tales to fill the hours between sunset and sleep, creating a structure for the evening that gives meaning and purpose to time that might otherwise drag by in uncomfortable awareness of cold and hunger. The content of winter stories reflects the realities of survival in ways that modern entertainment rarely does. Heroes in these tales are not warriors or princes, but ordinary people who demonstrate the virtues that keep communities alive during hardship. Generosity, when someone shares food with a neighbor whose stores have run low. Wisdom, when an elder recognizes the signs of a particularly harsh storm and convinces the village to take extra precautions. Courage, not in facing dragons or enemies, but in making the difficult decisions that survival sometimes requires. Consider now the way that stories create bonds between the members of a household who must depend on each other completely for survival. When people are pressed together for warmth, night after night, with no privacy and no escape from each other's company, tensions can build that threaten the cooperation essential for survival. Storytelling provides a shared focus that draws attention away from individual discomforts and toward a common experience that everyone can participate in regardless of age or status. The interactive nature of storytelling in these intimate settings means that everyone becomes part of the performance. Children learn to ask the right questions at the right moments. Adults contribute details or variations that keep familiar stories fresh, and elders share the responsibility of remembering different parts of long, complex tales. This participation creates a sense of ownership and belonging that strengthens the social bonds holding the family together. As the stories wind down and the fire burns lower, attention turns to the practical tasks that must be completed before sleep becomes possible. These evening tasks are not simply housekeeping, but essential survival activities that determine whether the family will wake up warm and alive or succumb to the cold during the vulnerable hours of the night. Hands move, grip, lift, strike. The sound of flint on steel fills the cottage as multiple fires are prepared beyond the main hearth. Small braziers, constructed from iron or clay, are positioned strategically around the sleeping area. These secondary heat sources serve different purposes than the main fire, which is designed to heat the entire space. The braziers provide localized warmth that can be moved and adjusted as needed throughout the night. Preparing these smaller fires requires careful attention to fuel selection. Not the large logs that feed the main hearth, but carefully chosen materials that burn slowly and steadily without producing dangerous amounts of smoke or consuming oxygen too quickly in the enclosed space. Charcoal, when available, burns clean and hot, providing efficient heat without the smoke that could suffocate sleepers. Dried peat, cut from bogs during the summer months, burns slowly and produces a steady warmth that can last for hours without attention. The arrangement of sleeping spaces becomes a complex puzzle that must account for the heat sources, the natural airflow patterns in the cottage, and the specific needs of each family member. The elderly and the very young, most vulnerable to cold, are positioned closest to the heat sources, but not so close that sparks or overheating become dangers. Adults arrange themselves to create windbreaks that protect the more vulnerable members, while ensuring that everyone has access to shared warmth. Bedding preparation involves more than simply laying out blankets and pillows. Straw mattresses are fluffed and rearranged to create maximum insulation from the cold earth floor. Additional layers of wool blankets are heated by the fire before being carried to the sleeping area, providing an initial warmth that helps bodies settle into sleep before the heated fabric cools to air temperature. Hot stones, heated in the coals of the main fire, are wrapped in cloth and placed at the foot of beds to provide warmth that will last well into the night. The process of banking the main fire for the night requires knowledge and skill that can mean the difference between waking to warmth or waking to a cold hearth that must be rebuilt from scratch. The goal is to maintain enough heat to keep the cottage above freezing while conserving fuel and ensuring that coals remain alive until morning. Large logs are positioned carefully in the coals, their placement calculated to ensure slow, steady burning without flaming that would consume the wood too quickly. Ashes play a crucial role in fire management, serving as insulation that helps maintain the temperature of the coals while preventing too much oxygen from feeding the flames. The fire tender, usually the most experienced adult in the household, builds up ash around the base of the logs, creating a barrier that controls the burn rate. Too little ash, and the fire burns too hot and fast, consuming precious fuel. Too much, and the fire dies completely, leaving the family to face the dawn with no heat source and the difficult task of rekindling flame when fingers are too numb to work properly. One mistake meant death by morning. The sealing of the cottage door represents one of the most critical tasks of the evening preparation, a process that requires balancing the need for warmth retention against the equally important need for breathable air. The door itself, with its gaps and imperfect fit, cannot simply be ignored, but neither can it be sealed so completely that the inhabitants suffocate during the night. The process begins with identifying every source of cold air infiltration around the door frame. Cracks between the door and the stone frame, gaps where the wood has warped away from the iron hinges, spaces where the bottom of the door fails to meet the threshold. Each opening is a pathway for precious heated air to escape and deadly cold air to enter, creating drafts that can make the difference between survival and freezing. Clay mixed with straw provides the primary sealing material, a mixture that can be pressed into gaps and cracks to block airflow, while remaining flexible enough to accommodate the expansion and contraction that occurs as temperatures fluctuate. The clay is prepared in advance, kept warm by the fire so that it remains workable even when the air temperature inside the cottage drops toward freezing. Working with cold clay is nearly impossible, as it becomes hard and brittle, cracking away from the surfaces it is meant to seal. The application of the clay mixture requires careful attention to detail and an understanding of how air moves through the small space. Starting at the bottom of the door frame, where cold air naturally wants to flow in like water finding the lowest point, the sealer works upward, pressing the mixture firmly into every visible gap. The consistency must be perfect, wet enough to adhere to both wood and stone, but not so wet that it runs or fails to hold its shape. Fabric strips, often torn from worn-out clothing or specially prepared rags, serve as additional barriers that can be wedged into larger gaps or wrapped around the door edges to create a tighter seal. These strips are sometimes treated with animal fat or beeswax to make them more resistant to moisture and more effective at blocking airflow. The fat also helps preserve the fabric, preventing it from rotting or becoming brittle during the long months of winter use. The threshold receives special attention, as this is often the largest source of air infiltration around a medieval door. A heavy cloth or piece of leather is often laid across the threshold and weighted down with stones or pieces of iron to create a barrier that blocks the flow of air under the door. This threshold covering must be heavy enough to stay in place, but not so thick that it prevents the door from opening when necessary during the night. Stone walls rise into darkness. Closer now, the individual stones become visible, each one selected and placed by hands that understood the relationship between shelter and survival. The walls themselves are thick, often 2 or 3 feet of solid stone, but stone alone does not stop the movement of air. Between the stones, mortar mixed with straw and clay fills the gaps, but this mortar is not perfect, and over time, the freeze and thaw cycles of winter create cracks that allow air to pass through. Draft control extends far beyond the door to encompass every surface of the cottage, where inside air meets outside cold. The single window, if the cottage is prosperous enough to have one, presents a particular challenge. Glass is a luxury far beyond the reach of most peasant families, so the window opening is covered with oiled cloth, thin sheets of horn, or simply wooden shutters that can be closed completely when the cold becomes too severe. The window covering must balance the need for light during the short winter days against the need to retain heat during the long winter nights. Oiled cloth allows some light to pass through while blocking most air movement, but it is fragile and can tear easily, creating gaps that defeat its purpose. Horn, scraped thin enough to be translucent, is more durable, but also more expensive and harder to obtain. Wooden shutters provide the best insulation, but block all light, creating a choice between warmth and the ability to see. The process of adjusting these coverings throughout the day and night becomes part of the rhythm of winter survival. During the brief daylight hours, coverings are opened or adjusted to allow maximum light while still providing protection from wind. As darkness falls and temperatures drop, the coverings are sealed as tightly as possible, often with additional materials pressed around the edges to eliminate any air movement. The roof presents another challenge for draft control, as the opening that allows smoke to escape from the hearth also allows warm air to rise and cold air to enter. This opening cannot be sealed completely, as the smoke from the fire would quickly fill the cottage and suffocate the inhabitants. Instead, the opening is covered with a movable cover that can be adjusted based on wind direction and the intensity of the fire below. Managing this roof opening requires understanding wind patterns and how they affect the draw of the fire. When wind blows directly across the opening, it can create a draft that pulls air up through the cottage, drawing cold air in through every crack and gap in the walls and door. The roof cover must be positioned to deflect this wind while still allowing smoke to escape, a delicate balance that requires constant attention throughout the night. Quick note: if this resonates with you, consider liking and subscribing. The knowledge of how people survived in conditions that would challenge even modern technology speaks to human adaptability and the power of accumulated wisdom passed down through generations. Body heat becomes the ultimate source of warmth when all other methods reach their limits. In a cottage where the air temperature may drop below freezing even with a fire burning, the heat generated by living bodies provides the final margin that determines survival. Understanding how to maximize, conserve, and share this body heat transforms a collection of individuals into a coordinated survival unit where each person's warmth contributes to the survival of all. The human body generates heat through metabolism, the constant chemical processes that convert food into energy and maintain life. But this heat production has limits, and when the surrounding temperature drops low enough, the body begins to shut down circulation to the extremities in order to preserve heat for the vital organs. Fingers and toes become numb first, then hands and feet, as blood flow is redirected toward the core where heart, lungs, and brain must be kept warm to maintain life. Maximizing body heat begins with understanding how the body loses warmth and taking steps to minimize these losses. The head and neck are major sources of heat loss, as blood vessels near the surface of the skin release warmth directly into the surrounding air. Covering the head with multiple layers of wool, even while sleeping, helps retain this heat and keeps it circulating through the rest of the body. The neck, with its large blood vessels close to the skin surface, receives similar attention, often wrapped with wool scarves or cloth that trap warm air against the skin. The arrangement of bodies during sleep becomes a carefully planned strategy that takes advantage of shared warmth, while ensuring that everyone has access to the heat they need to survive the night. Family members sleep pressed closely together, often with children positioned between adults, where they can benefit from heat radiating from both sides. The largest adult, who generates the most body heat, often sleeps on the outside of the group, serving as a windbreak that protects the others from drafts while contributing warmth to the shared space. Breathing becomes both a source of heat and a potential source of heat loss during the coldest nights. Each exhaled breath carries away body heat, but the same breath also warms the air immediately around the face and head. Sleeping with faces partially covered, often buried in wool blankets or pressed against another person's body, helps capture and recycle this exhaled warmth. The technique requires practice, as covering the face too completely can restrict breathing, while leaving it too exposed allows precious heat to escape into the cold air. The extremities require special attention and techniques that go beyond simple covering. Hands and feet, farthest from the heart and most vulnerable to losing circulation, are often pressed against the warmer parts of other people's bodies during sleep. A child's cold feet might be placed against a parent's warm stomach, while numb hands are tucked into armpits or pressed against the warm skin of the neck or chest. These intimate arrangements, born of necessity rather than affection, create physical bonds that reinforce the social cooperation essential for survival. Movement during the night serves to maintain circulation and prevent the dangerous stillness that allows body heat to dissipate into the surrounding cold. Family members take turns moving carefully within the shared sleeping space, flexing fingers and toes, shifting position to ensure that no part of the body remains in contact with cold surfaces for too long. This movement must be coordinated to avoid disturbing the carefully arranged positions that maximize shared warmth, requiring a level of awareness and cooperation even during sleep. The timing of sleep itself becomes part of the heat management strategy. Rather than sleeping through the entire night as modern people do, winter sleep often occurs in shifts that allow someone to remain awake and tend the fire while others rest. The person on fire duty not only maintains the heat source, but also monitors the condition of the sleepers, watching for signs of dangerous heat loss and making adjustments to coverings or positions as needed. Food. Consumption before sleep provides internal fuel for the body's heat generation throughout the night. The last meal of the day, often a warm porridge or soup made from whatever ingredients are available, serves not just as nutrition, but as a source of internal warmth that helps maintain body temperature during the vulnerable hours of sleep. The warmth of the food itself provides immediate comfort, while the calories fuel the metabolic processes that generate heat throughout the night. Dim the lights, settle into comfort, and picture the way that morning arrives in a cottage that has survived another night of winter's assault. The first person to wake moves carefully, testing the air temperature and checking the condition of the fire before disturbing the carefully arranged sleeping group. breath visible in the cold air, hands stiff with cold despite the shared warmth. They begin the process of rebuilding the heat that will carry the family through another day. The fire, if properly tended, still glows beneath its blanket of ash, coals waiting to spring back to life with the addition of dry kindling and gentle breath. The person tending the morning fire works quickly but carefully, knowing that a mistake now, when everyone is cold and vulnerable, could mean starting over with flint and steel, while the cottage grows colder with each passing minute. As warmth begins to spread from the rebuilt fire, other family members stir, reluctant to leave the shared warmth of the sleeping arrangement, but knowing that the day's survival tasks must begin. The cycle that has repeated itself every day throughout the winter begins again, each person taking their role in the complex dance of survival that has carried them through the night and will, with luck and skill and the accumulated wisdom of generations, carry them through another day toward the eventual promise of spring. The night progresses with subtle sounds that mark the passage of hours in a world without clocks. The settling of heated stones cooling gradually in their cloth wrappings, the soft whisper of ash shifting as logs burn down to glowing coals, the barely audible creak of timber expanding and contracting as temperature fluctuates throughout the cottage. These sounds become the timepiece by which survival is measured, each familiar noise indicating that the carefully constructed system of warmth continues to function as intended. Food storage during the depths of winter requires techniques that transform ordinary cottages into complex preservation systems designed to keep sustenance edible when fresh provisions are impossible to obtain. The root cellar dug beneath the cottage floor serves as the foundation of this system, its earthen walls maintaining a constant temperature just above freezing that prevents stored vegetables from rotting while keeping them cool enough to slow deterioration. Turnips, carrots, and onions nestle in beds of straw, their surfaces dry and clean, positioned so that air can circulate around each piece to prevent moisture buildup that leads to decay. The process of creating this underground storage begins months before winter arrives, when the ground is still soft enough to dig, and the harvest provides the materials that must last until spring. Men work in shifts to excavate the cellar, digging down through layers of soil and clay until they reach a depth where the earth temperature remains stable, regardless of the weather above. The walls are lined with stones to prevent collapse and to provide the thermal mass that helps maintain consistent temperatures, even during the most severe cold snaps. Grain storage presents different challenges that require understanding both the behavior of various grains and the pests that threaten stored food supplies. Wheat, barley, and oats must be kept completely dry to prevent mold and sprouting, but they also must be protected from mice, rats, and insects that can destroy months of carefully preserved nutrition in a matter of days. Large ceramic vessels, their interiors glazed smooth to deny hiding places to pests, serve as the primary containers for grain storage. The process of preparing grain for storage begins immediately after harvest, when the grain is spread on wooden platforms and turned regularly to ensure complete drying. Any grain that shows signs of moisture or damage is removed immediately, as a single moldy kernel can spread contamination through an entire container within weeks. The dried grain is then poured into the storage vessels in layers, with each layer separated by aromatic herbs that repel insects while adding no flavor that might affect the grain's eventual use. Sealing these storage containers requires materials and techniques that create an environment hostile to pests, while maintaining the grain's quality throughout the long winter months. Beeswax, when available, provides an excellent seal that can be applied around the rim of ceramic lids to create an airtight barrier. The wax must be warmed just enough to become pliable without becoming so hot that it loses its sealing properties. A delicate balance that requires experience and careful attention. Clay mixed with crushed limestone creates an alternative sealing compound that hardens to stone-like durability while remaining somewhat flexible to accommodate the expansion and contraction of the containers as temperatures change. This mixture is pressed around the edges of container lids and smoothed to eliminate any gaps or cracks where air or pests might penetrate. The limestone component helps absorb moisture from the air, creating a drier environment within the sealed container. Meat preservation transforms fresh protein into forms that remain edible throughout the winter months, when hunting becomes difficult and livestock must be conserved to survive until spring breeding. Smoking provides one of the most effective preservation methods, but it requires a smoking chamber separate from the main cottage hearth to maintain the low temperatures and controlled airflow necessary for proper curing. This smoking chamber, often built into a hillside or constructed as a small separate building, allows for the slow application of smoke over days or weeks that penetrates deep into the meat fibers. The selection of wood for smoking affects both the preservation quality and the flavor of the finished meat. Hardwoods like oak, hickory, and beech burn slowly and produce steady smoke with compounds that help prevent bacterial growth while adding flavors that make preserved meat more palatable. Softwoods and resinous trees are avoided, as their smoke contains compounds that can make meat bitter or even unsafe to eat. Salt, when available, provides another crucial preservation method that draws moisture from meat and creates an environment hostile to the bacteria that cause spoilage. The salting process begins with covering fresh meat completely in coarse salt, ensuring that every surface is in contact with the preserving agent. The salt draws moisture from the meat, creating a brine that must be drained away regularly to prevent the development of harmful bacteria in the accumulated liquid. The combination of salt and smoking creates preserved meats that can remain edible for months when stored properly in cool, dry conditions. These preserved meats become the protein foundation that sustains families through the winter months when fresh meat is unavailable. The preservation process requires careful timing and attention to detail, as mistakes can result in spoiled meat that not only wastes precious protein, but can cause dangerous illness when consumed. Rendered fat serves multiple purposes in winter survival beyond simple nutrition, becoming a versatile material that addresses needs ranging from waterproofing to medicine. The rendering process begins with carefully cutting fresh fat from slaughtered animals into small pieces that will melt evenly when heated slowly over the fire. This fat must be heated gradually to avoid burning, which would destroy its useful properties and create an unpleasant taste that makes it unsuitable for food preparation. The liquid fat that results from proper rendering can be stored in ceramic containers or sewn leather pouches, where it solidifies into a stable form that remains usable throughout the winter months. This rendered fat serves as cooking oil for preparing other foods, but it also becomes a crucial component in creating waterproof coatings for leather goods, a base for simple medications, and even emergency fuel for lamps when other lighting materials are exhausted. Dried vegetables supplement the stored roots and preserved meats, providing essential nutrients that prevent the diseases that can develop during long periods without fresh food. The drying process begins during the harvest season, when vegetables are at their peak nutritional content, requiring techniques that remove moisture while preserving as many vitamins and minerals as possible. Onions, leeks, and herbs are braided into long ropes that hang from the cottage rafters, their placement carefully chosen to take advantage of air circulation while keeping them away from moisture sources. Beans and peas present particular challenges for drying and storage, as their high protein content makes them especially attractive to insects and rodents. These legumes must be completely dried until they rattle like stones when shaken, then stored in containers that provide absolute protection from pests. The drying process often takes weeks, with the beans spread on wooden platforms and turned daily to ensure even moisture removal from every part of the seed. The cottage transforms into a complex storage system, where every available space serves a purpose in preserving the materials necessary for survival. Bundles of dried herbs hang from ceiling beams, their aromatic compounds serving dual purposes as seasoning for bland winter meals and as medicines for treating the ailments that commonly develop during the cold months. These herbs must be positioned where air circulation keeps them dry, while protecting them from the smoke and moisture that constantly move through the cottage interior. Pottery vessels of various sizes occupy corners and alcoves throughout the cottage, each container serving specific storage needs that require different materials and sealing techniques. Large vessels hold grains and dried legumes, their wide mouths allowing for easy access, while their narrow bases minimize the floor space they occupy. Smaller containers store precious commodities like salt, honey, and rendered fat, their sizes reflecting the value and scarcity of their contents. The organization of these storage systems requires knowledge that extends beyond simple preservation techniques to include understanding how different stored materials interact with each other over time. Certain combinations of stored foods can create problems, such as strong-smelling items that can transfer flavors to more delicate foods, or materials that produce moisture that can damage dry goods stored nearby. The arrangement of storage containers and hanging bundles follows patterns developed through generations of experience with what combinations work and which create problems. Water sources freeze solid when temperatures drop to 40 below zero, transforming the simple act of obtaining drinking water into a survival challenge that requires planning, physical effort, and techniques that prevent both dehydration and dangerous overexertion in extreme cold. Wells, when they exist in medieval villages, often freeze to depths of several feet, requiring tools and methods to break through ice thick enough to support a person's weight while accessing the liquid water beneath. The process of breaking through well ice begins before dawn, when the cold has reached its maximum intensity and the ice has achieved its greatest thickness. Heavy iron bars, heated in the cottage fire until they glow red hot, serve as the primary tools for melting through the frozen surface. These bars must be carried quickly from fire to well, while still hot enough to melt ice on contact, requiring coordination between multiple people to transport the heated metal safely across the frozen ground. Melting ice provides an alternative water source when wells become inaccessible, but the process requires fuel and time that may be in short supply during the most severe weather. Clean snow and ice must be selected carefully, avoiding material that has been contaminated by animals or mixed with dirt and debris. The melting process consumes precious firewood and requires constant attention to prevent the water from boiling away as steam, wasting both fuel and the water it was meant to produce. Collection and storage of water during winter requires containers and techniques that prevent the precious liquid from freezing solid before it can be consumed. Ceramic jugs and leather containers are kept close to the fire, where radiant heat maintains water in liquid form, while avoiding temperatures high enough to crack ceramic or damage leather. The water containers are often wrapped in wool or cloth to provide additional insulation and to protect hands from burns when handling vessels that have been heated by proximity to the fire. The timing of water collection becomes crucial during the coldest periods, when exposed water can freeze solid within minutes of being brought into contact with the outside air. Water collection expeditions are planned for the warmest part of the day, typically midday, when whatever sun penetrates the winter clouds provides marginal warming that may make the difference between success and failure in obtaining liquid water. Rationing water consumption requires balancing the body's need for hydration against the difficulty and danger of obtaining water during extreme cold. Adults can survive on smaller quantities of water than they would consume during warmer weather, but dehydration becomes dangerous more quickly when the body is already stressed by cold temperatures and limited nutrition. Children and elderly family members require closer monitoring, as they may not recognize the signs of dehydration until the condition becomes serious. The quality of available water during winter often deteriorates due to the limited sources and the conditions under which it must be obtained and stored. Melted snow and ice may contain impurities that are not visible but can cause illness, while water obtained from partially frozen sources may have concentrated minerals or other substances that affect taste and safety. Boiling water before consumption serves dual purposes, purifying the liquid while providing internal warmth that contributes to maintaining body temperature. Storage of water overnight requires techniques that prevent freezing while maintaining access for drinking during the long, cold hours of darkness. Water containers are often taken into the sleeping area, where body heat and shared blankets provide enough warmth to keep the liquid from freezing solid. This practice requires careful handling to avoid spills that would create dangerous ice patches on the cottage floor and waste precious water that may be difficult to replace. Emergency water sources become crucial knowledge when conventional sources fail completely due to extreme weather conditions. Hidden springs that remain liquid even in severe cold, techniques for locating water beneath ice-covered streams, and methods for safely collecting moisture from other sources provide backup options that can mean the difference between survival and death during prolonged cold spells. The human body's relationship with cold water consumption changes dramatically when environmental temperatures drop to life-threatening levels, requiring adjustments in how water is prepared and consumed to avoid shocking the system or wasting precious body heat. Cold water consumed directly can lower core body temperature dangerously, while water that is too hot can burn the mouth and throat tissues that are already stressed by breathing extremely cold air. Warming water to body temperature before consumption provides hydration while contributing to maintaining internal warmth. But this warming process must be accomplished without wasting fuel or creating steam that adds unwanted moisture to the cottage air. Small quantities of water are heated in metal containers placed close to the fire, with careful attention to achieving the right temperature without overheating. The warmed water provides internal heat that helps maintain circulation and supports the body's heat generation processes. Strikes, sparks. The sharp sound of metal on flint echoes through the cottage as fire-making tools are tested and prepared for emergency use throughout the night. Fire represents the difference between life and death, when temperatures drop to extremes that human bodies cannot survive without external heat sources, making fire-making equipment and techniques the most crucial survival skills in the medieval winter arsenal. The primary fire-making kit consists of flint, steel, and tinder, each component requiring specific qualities and preparation to function reliably in extreme cold conditions. Flint must be of high quality, free from cracks or impurities that would prevent it from producing the hot sparks necessary to ignite tinder. The flint is often wrapped in leather or cloth to protect it from moisture and to provide a secure grip, when hands are numb with cold and fine motor control is compromised. Steel strikers are shaped and hardened specifically for fire making, their edges designed to scrape against flint at the correct angle to produce maximum sparks. The quality of the steel and the skill with which it is forged determine the effectiveness of the fire-making process, making these tools valuable possessions that are maintained carefully and passed down through generations. The striker must be kept dry and free from rust, requiring regular cleaning and occasional resharpening to maintain its effectiveness. Tinder preparation requires collecting and processing materials that will catch fire easily from the small sparks produced by flint and steel, then burn long enough to ignite kindling that can support a sustainable fire. The best tinder materials are fibrous substances that have been processed to create maximum surface area for spark contact while remaining dry enough to ignite instantly. Char cloth, made by heating fabric in a closed container until it becomes carbonized, provides one of the most reliable tinder materials available to medieval firemakers. The char cloth creation process begins with selecting appropriate fabric, typically linen or cotton cloth, that burns cleanly without producing toxic residues. Small pieces of this fabric are placed in a metal container with a tight-fitting lid, then heated gradually in the coals of an existing fire. The process must be controlled carefully to char the fabric without allowing it to burn completely to ash, requiring experience to recognize the signs that indicate proper charring has occurred. Alternative tinder materials include fungus scraped from birch trees, dried moss processed to increase its flammability, and shredded inner bark from certain trees that burns readily when properly prepared. These natural materials require processing that breaks down their structure to create fine, fibrous material that presents maximum surface area to catching sparks. The processing often involves scraping with knife blades or rubbing between rough stones to achieve the proper texture. Keeping tinder dry during winter conditions requires storage methods that protect these crucial materials from moisture while maintaining easy access during emergency situations. Tinder is often stored in small leather pouches or wooden containers that can be sealed completely against moisture infiltration. These containers are kept close to the body or near heat sources to ensure that the tinder remains dry and ready for use even when the cottage environment becomes damp from cooking, breathing, and other moisture sources. The fire-making process itself requires techniques adapted for use in extreme cold, when hands may be too numb for fine manipulation, and when failure means potentially fatal consequences. The process begins with preparing all materials in advance, arranging flint, steel, tinder, and kindling in positions where they can be accessed quickly and efficiently. This preparation becomes even more crucial when working in dim light or complete darkness during long winter nights. Striking technique must be practiced until it becomes automatic, as the precise angle and pressure required to produce effective sparks cannot be learned during an emergency when stress and cold interfere with learning new skills. The steel is held firmly, while the flint is struck downward at an angle that scrapes the maximum amount of metal from the striker, producing a shower of hot sparks that fall onto the prepared tinder below. Catching sparks in tinder requires positioning the tinder material to intercept the falling sparks while providing access for the gentle blowing that transforms a glowing ember into actual flame. The tinder is often placed in a shallow depression or held in cupped hands that can direct airflow precisely where it is needed to encourage the spark to grow into sustainable fire. This process requires patience and steady hands, as rushing can extinguish the delicate ember before it develops into flame. Transferring fire from tinder to kindling represents the critical transition point, where a small ember must be nurtured into a fire capable of igniting larger fuel materials. The kindling must be arranged to allow airflow while presenting sufficient surface area for the small flame to catch and spread. This arrangement often takes the form of a small nest or cage of thin, dry twigs that can support slightly larger pieces of wood as the fire grows in intensity. Emergency fire-making scenarios require techniques and materials that function even when primary methods fail, due to extreme conditions or equipment problems. Backup tinder supplies are hidden in multiple locations throughout the cottage, ensuring that fire-making materials remain available even if primary supplies are damaged or exhausted. These backup supplies often include different types of tinder materials, providing alternatives if specific materials fail to perform under particular conditions. Fire maintenance during extreme cold requires understanding how different wood types burn and how to arrange fuel to provide steady heat while conserving precious wood supplies. Hardwoods like oak and beech burn longer and hotter than softwoods, making them ideal for maintaining base heat throughout the night, while softer woods like pine and fir ignite more easily and can be used to quickly boost heat output when temperatures drop dangerously low. The arrangement of wood in the fire affects both heat output and fuel consumption, with different configurations serving different purposes depending on immediate needs and available fuel supplies. A log cabin arrangement with logs stacked in alternating directions creates maximum airflow and produces intense heat quickly, making it ideal for rapidly warming a cold cottage. A lean-to arrangement with logs angled against a larger back log produces steadier, longer-lasting heat that requires less frequent attention during the night. Banking fires for extended burning requires techniques that maintain combustion while minimizing fuel consumption, allowing a fire to provide heat for many hours without requiring fresh fuel. Large logs are positioned to burn slowly from one end, with their placement calculated to ensure steady progression of the fire along the length of the wood. The fire is then covered partially with ash, which insulates the coals while controlling airflow to maintain combustion without allowing the fire to burn too quickly. Understanding wind patterns and how they affect fire behavior becomes crucial when chimneys and smoke holes create drafts that can either enhance fire performance or cause dangerous problems. Strong winds can create downdrafts that blow smoke back into the cottage, while other wind patterns can create excessive updrafts that cause fires to burn too quickly and consume fuel wastefully. Adjusting fire arrangements and cottage ventilation to work with rather than against wind patterns requires experience and understanding of local weather conditions. Fire safety during extreme survival conditions requires balancing the need for heat against the dangers of fire in enclosed spaces, where escape may be difficult and where water for firefighting may be frozen solid. Spark guards made from metal screens or closely woven twigs help prevent sparks from escaping the fire area and igniting clothing, bedding, or stored materials. These guards must be positioned to contain sparks while allowing heat to radiate into the living space. Emergency firefighting materials are prepared and positioned strategically throughout the cottage, providing immediate access to fire suppression methods even when water is not available. Sand, dirt, and snow can smother small fires, while heavy blankets can be used to beat down flames or wrap around burning materials to cut off oxygen supply. These emergency materials must be kept in locations where they remain accessible, even during the confusion and darkness that may accompany fire emergencies. Snow begins as individual crystals high in the atmosphere, each one forming around microscopic particles of dust or other matter that provide nucleation points for water vapor to crystallize into ice. These crystals grow as they fall through layers of atmosphere with different temperatures and humidity levels, their final shapes determined by the specific conditions they encounter during their journey to Earth. By the time snow reaches the ground in a medieval village, it carries information about atmospheric conditions that observant people can read to predict weather changes and prepare for shifts in temperature that may affect survival. Understanding snow conditions becomes crucial knowledge for people whose lives depend on predicting weather changes and adapting their survival strategies accordingly. Fresh snow that falls in large, soft flakes indicates relatively warm conditions in the upper atmosphere, suggesting that temperatures may not drop to the most extreme levels immediately. Small, hard pellets of snow or ice crystals indicate much colder conditions that may persist or worsen, requiring additional preparations for extended periods of severe cold. The accumulation of snow around the cottage serves multiple purposes beyond simple insulation, creating opportunities for improving survival conditions, while also presenting challenges that must be managed carefully. Snow banked against cottage walls provides additional insulation that helps retain interior heat. But this same snow can create moisture problems if it melts and refreezes in cycles that drive water into cracks and gaps in the cottage structure. Managing snow accumulation requires techniques that take advantage of snow's insulating properties while preventing problems that can compromise the cottage's integrity or create dangerous conditions. Snow is often piled deliberately against the north and west walls of the cottage, where it provides protection against the prevailing winds that carry the coldest air. This snow must be packed carefully to eliminate air gaps that would reduce its insulating effectiveness, while ensuring that it slopes away from the cottage to direct melting water away from the foundation. Paths through snow must be maintained to provide access to essential resources like fuel supplies, water sources, and storage areas that may be located outside the main cottage. Creating these paths requires more than simply walking through the snow, as packed footpaths can become dangerously icy when temperatures fluctuate around freezing. The paths are often lined with straw or other materials that provide traction while preventing the formation of ice that could cause dangerous falls. Snow removal from critical areas requires tools and techniques adapted for working in extreme cold, when metal tools become painful to touch, and when overexertion can lead to dangerous sweating, followed by rapid cooling. Wooden shovels and brooms serve as the primary snow removal tools, their materials less likely to cause frostbite when touched with bare skin during emergency situations. The removal process must be paced carefully to avoid exhaustion and excessive sweating that can create dangerous cooling when work stops. Reading snow conditions provides information about temperature trends and weather patterns that help predict when conditions may improve or worsen significantly. Snow that remains powdery and light indicates consistently cold temperatures that prevent melting and refreezing cycles. Snow that becomes crusty or develops ice layers suggests temperature fluctuations that may indicate changing weather patterns or wind conditions that affect local temperatures. The sound of snow provides additional information about conditions and changes that may not be visible in dim winter light. Fresh snow falling creates a distinctive soft whisper that can be heard from inside the cottage, indicating continuing precipitation that may require adjustments to outdoor work plans or preparations for deeper accumulations. The creaking and settling sounds of accumulated snow indicate changes in temperature or moisture content that may affect the stability of snow loads on the cottage roof. Using snow for insulation requires understanding how different snow conditions provide different insulating properties, and how to manage snow to maximize its effectiveness as a barrier against cold. Loose, fluffy snow contains more air and provides better insulation than compact snow, but loose snow is also more likely to be blown away by wind or to settle and lose its insulating properties over time. The snow used for insulation must be managed to maintain its structure while providing maximum thermal protection. Harvesting snow for water requires selecting clean snow, while avoiding contaminated material that may contain animal waste, dirt, or other substances that make it unsuitable for consumption. The cleanest snow is typically found in areas protected from wind that might blow contaminants, and from locations where animals are unlikely to have traveled. Fresh snow that has fallen recently provides the purest water source, while older snow may have accumulated impurities from prolonged exposure to wind and weather. The melting process for snow requires more fuel than might be expected, as snow has low density and high water content that requires significant energy to convert from solid to liquid form. Large quantities of snow must be melted to produce relatively small amounts of water, making this process expensive in terms of fuel consumption during periods when fuel supplies may be critically limited. The melting must be done gradually to prevent burning the container and to avoid creating steam that wastes both water and fuel. Snow storage for future melting requires techniques that keep the snow clean and accessible while preventing it from melting prematurely or becoming contaminated during storage. Clean snow is often packed into containers and stored in the coldest areas of the cottage, where it remains frozen until needed for water. This storage snow must be protected from contamination by smoke, cooking odors, and other sources that could make the resulting water unpalatable or unsafe. Emergency shelter construction using snow becomes crucial knowledge when cottage heating fails completely, or when people become stranded away from shelter during severe weather. Snow caves and windbreaks can provide temporary protection. That means the difference between survival and death during extreme conditions. But these emergency shelters require specific construction techniques that maximize protection, while avoiding dangers like collapse or carbon dioxide buildup. The insulating properties of snow depend on its structure and density, with optimal insulation occurring when snow contains maximum air content while maintaining structural integrity. Understanding how to select and arrange snow for maximum insulating effectiveness requires knowledge of how different snow types perform under various conditions and how to modify snow structure to improve its protective qualities. Wind direction and intensity affect how snow accumulates around structures and in the landscape, creating patterns that can be read to understand local weather conditions and predict how snow will behave in different locations around the cottage. Snow drifts form in predictable patterns based on wind direction and obstacles, creating areas where snow accumulates deeply while leaving other areas relatively clear. Human tracks in snow create pathways that can either help or hinder movement depending on how they are created and maintained, requiring understanding of how foot traffic affects snow conditions and how to create paths that remain useful rather than becoming hazardous ice formations. The technique for walking in deep snow differs from normal walking, requiring longer strides and different foot placement to avoid exhaustion while maintaining progress toward essential destinations. Temperature variations affect snow conditions in ways that change throughout the day and from day to day, requiring constant assessment of snow conditions and adjustment of techniques for working with and moving through snow. Snow that is manageable during the coldest parts of the day may become dangerous slush during brief warming periods, while snow that seems solid may conceal dangerous soft areas that can trap or injure people attempting to move across its surface. As the evening deepens and the cottage settles into the rhythm of another winter night, the sounds from neighboring dwellings begin to weave together into the complex symphony of a village fighting collectively against the cold. Through walls of stone and timber, across courtyards buried beneath snowdrifts, the evidence of survival echoes in patterns that have repeated themselves for generations uncounted. Clay vessels line the walls of every cottage, their surfaces blackened by smoke and worn smooth by countless hands. These containers represent more than simple storage. They embody the difference between abundance and starvation, when the frozen ground yields nothing and trade routes remain impassable for months. The largest vessels, standing nearly as tall as a grown person, hold the grain that must sustain entire families until spring planting becomes possible again. Their wide mouths, sealed with wooden lids and clay, create chambers where wheat and barley rest in darkness, protected from moisture and the countless creatures that would consume winter stores given the slightest opportunity. The clay itself tells stories of preparation that begin in late summer, when potters work frantically to create the vessels that will hold winter's lifeline. Local clay, dug from riverbanks and hillsides, must be processed to remove stones and organic matter that would weaken the finished pottery. The clay is mixed with sand and crushed pottery fragments, materials that prevent cracking during the drying and firing process. Each vessel requires days to shape, dry, and fire, with the potter's skill determining whether the finished container will hold grain safely or develop cracks that invite disaster. Firing these large storage vessels requires kilns that can maintain consistent temperatures for days while consuming enormous quantities of fuel wood. The firing process cannot be rushed, as rapid heating causes clay to crack and renders months of work useless. Potters tend their kilns through day and night shifts, adding fuel at precise intervals and monitoring the color of flames that indicate internal temperatures. A successful firing produces pottery with walls thick enough to resist impacts while remaining thin enough to conserve precious clay resources. The arrangement of storage vessels within cottages follows principles that maximize protection while maintaining access to stored materials throughout the winter months. The largest containers occupy positions against interior walls, where they benefit from the thermal mass of stone, while remaining protected from moisture that might penetrate exterior walls. Smaller vessels are positioned within easy reach of cooking areas, their contents representing the daily rations that sustain life, while preserving the larger stores for later in the winter, when other food sources may be exhausted. Sealing techniques for these storage containers must create barriers that remain effective for months, while withstanding the temperature fluctuations that cause materials to expand and contract repeatedly. Wooden lids are carved to fit precisely into the mouths of containers, their edges shaped to create tight seals when pressed into place. These lids are often lined with leather or cloth treated with animal fat, creating gaskets that conform to irregularities in the clay surfaces, while providing additional barriers against air and moisture infiltration. The contents of storage vessels are layered with materials that provide additional protection against spoilage and pest infiltration. Aromatic herbs like lavender, rosemary, and mint are scattered between layers of grain, their natural oils repelling insects while contributing subtle flavors that make stored grain more palatable after months of storage. Bay leaves and dried garlic cloves serve similar purposes, their strong scents creating environments hostile to the moths and beetles that can destroy entire food stores within weeks if left unchecked. Testing stored grain throughout the winter requires techniques that assess quality without exposing large quantities to air and contamination. Small samples are removed from different depths within storage containers, their color, texture, and scent evaluated for signs of spoilage or pest activity. Grain that shows any signs of mold or insect damage is removed immediately and used for animal feed or other purposes that prevent the contamination from spreading to healthy stores. Grinding grain into flour transforms stored seeds into forms suitable for bread making. But this grinding process must be managed carefully to avoid waste while producing flour with the texture and quality necessary for successful baking. Hand mills, constructed from two circular stones with precisely carved grinding surfaces, reduce grain to flour through the repetitive circular motion that requires strength and endurance from the person operating the mill. The grinding stones themselves represent significant investments in survival technology, their surfaces carved with patterns that enhance their grinding effectiveness while ensuring even flour production. These patterns must be maintained throughout the winter, with periodic sharpening using metal tools that restore the cutting edges worn smooth by constant use. The quality of flour produced depends directly on the condition and alignment of the grinding stones, making their maintenance a crucial skill that affects the family's ability to produce edible bread from stored grain. Cleaning procedures remove grinding stone dust and metal particles from flour, materials that would make bread gritty and unpalatable, while potentially causing dental damage that could become serious health problems when medical care is unavailable. Flour is sifted through cloth screens that separate the finest particles suitable for bread making from coarser materials that can be used for animal feed, or mixed into porridges where texture is less critical. The process of turning stored grain into daily bread begins before dawn, with the preparation of fires hot enough to heat baking stones or clay ovens to temperatures that will cook bread thoroughly without burning the exterior before the interior is done. Bread baking requires understanding the relationship between fire temperature, baking time, and dough composition, knowledge that comes only through experience and careful observation of how different conditions affect the final product. Dough preparation combines flour with water, salt when available, and sometimes small amounts of preserved yeast or sourdough starter that has been maintained throughout the winter. The water used for bread making must be warmed to temperatures that activate yeast while avoiding heat levels that would kill the organisms responsible for making bread rise. This temperature control requires experience and careful attention, as bread that fails to rise properly may be the only food available for days when weather conditions prevent additional baking attempts. Kneading dough develops the gluten structures that give bread its texture and ability to hold the gases produced by yeast fermentation. This kneading process requires physical strength and technique, with the dough worked until it achieves the smooth, elastic consistency that indicates proper gluten development. The kneading must be thorough enough to create good bread texture while avoiding overworking that would make the finished bread tough and difficult to chew. Rising times for bread dough are affected by cottage temperature, requiring adjustments to timing and techniques based on how effectively the living space can be heated. Cold temperatures slow yeast activity and extend rising times, while excessive heat can kill yeast and prevent proper bread development. Finding warm locations within the cottage where dough can rise properly without being damaged by excessive heat requires understanding air circulation patterns and temperature variations throughout the living space. Baking bread in medieval cottages requires techniques adapted for hearth cooking, where temperature control depends on fire management rather than adjustable ovens. Baking stones are heated in the fire until they reach proper temperature, then removed and covered with dough that cooks from the heat stored in the stone. This method requires timing that accounts for how quickly stones cool and how long different bread sizes require to cook completely through their centers. Alternative baking methods include clay pots that serve as miniature ovens when inverted over bread dough placed on hot stones. These pot ovens create enclosed spaces that trap heat and moisture, producing bread with crusts and textures different from direct stone baking. The pots must be preheated to avoid shocking cold clay with sudden temperature changes that could cause cracking and render the baking vessel useless. Testing bread for doneness requires techniques that determine when the interior has cooked completely without cutting into the bread and releasing heat that could affect the final texture. Experienced bakers tap bread crusts and listen for the hollow sound that indicates proper cooking, while visual cues like crust color and the way bread springs back when pressed provide additional information about cooking progress. Cooling bread properly prevents condensation from forming inside the crust and making bread soggy, but cooling must occur in environments that protect the bread from freezing while allowing air circulation that maintains crust texture. Bread is often wrapped in cloth and placed in locations where cottage heat provides gentle warming without direct exposure to fire that could dry out the bread or create uneven textures. Storage of baked bread requires balancing the need to maintain freshness against the reality that bread may need to remain edible for several days when weather conditions prevent regular baking. Bread containers made from wood or woven baskets provide protection from rodents, while allowing air circulation that prevents moisture buildup that leads to mold growth. These containers are often lined with cloth that can be washed and replaced when it becomes contaminated. Preserving bread for extended storage involves techniques that remove moisture while maintaining nutritional value and palatability. Hard biscuits, baked until most moisture is removed, can remain edible for weeks when stored properly in dry conditions. These preserved breads require soaking in warm liquid before consumption, but provide reliable nutrition when fresh bread cannot be produced due to extreme weather conditions or fuel shortages. The sound of wood splitting echoes across the village as axes bite into frozen timber, each strike requiring precision and strength when metal tools become brittle in extreme cold, and mistakes can result in damaged equipment that cannot be easily replaced. Fuel wood represents the foundation of winter survival, but obtaining and preparing this fuel requires techniques adapted for working in conditions where exposed skin can freeze within minutes, and where the physical demands of wood cutting must be balanced against the body's limited ability to generate heat through exertion. Tree selection for fuel wood begins with understanding how different wood species burn and how their characteristics affect heat output, burning duration, and smoke production. Hardwoods like oak, beech, and maple provide the most heat per unit of wood, while burning slowly and steadily, making them ideal for maintaining base heat throughout long winter nights. These hardwoods must be cut and split while green, as seasoned hardwood becomes extremely difficult to split and requires more energy to process than the additional heat output justifies. Softwoods like pine, fir, and spruce ignite more easily and burn hotter initially, making them valuable for quickly raising cottage temperatures when conditions become dangerously cold. However, softwoods burn faster than hardwoods and produce more smoke, requiring different handling techniques and burning strategies that account for their characteristics. Resinous softwoods can also create creosote buildup in chimneys and smoke holes, presenting fire hazards that must be managed through proper burning techniques and regular cleaning. The process of felling trees during winter requires techniques that account for frozen wood, icy conditions, and the limited daylight hours available for outdoor work. Frozen wood is harder and more brittle than wood cut during warmer seasons, requiring sharper tools and different cutting techniques that prevent axe blades from becoming stuck or damaged in the hard, frozen timber. The direction of tree falls must be planned carefully to avoid damage to other trees or structures, while accounting for snow conditions that may affect how fallen trees can be moved and processed. Cutting techniques for frozen wood require understanding how cold affects wood grain and how to work with rather than against the natural splitting characteristics of different tree species. Axes must be kept sharp through regular maintenance, as dull blades require more force to cut frozen wood and increase the risk of accidents when tools slip or bounce off hard surfaces. The angle and force of axe strikes must be adjusted for frozen conditions, with cuts planned to take advantage of natural weak points in wood grain that remain accessible even when wood is frozen solid. Safety considerations for winter wood cutting include understanding how cold affects human coordination and the strength, requiring frequent breaks to maintain body temperature while avoiding overexertion that leads to dangerous sweating followed by rapid cooling. Tools must be handled with extra care when hands are numb with cold and fine motor control is compromised, making accidents more likely and more dangerous when medical help is unavailable and wounds heal slowly in cold conditions. Splitting wood into sizes appropriate for cottage fires requires techniques that produce pieces small enough to burn efficiently, while large enough to provide sustained heat output. The splitting process begins with identifying natural crack lines and weak points in wood grain that allow logs to be split with minimum effort and tool wear. Wedges made from iron or hardwood are driven into these weak points, creating controlled splits that produce usable fuel wood while conserving the physical energy required for wood processing. Processing techniques must account for the different burning characteristics required for various stages of fire management throughout the day and night. Kindling wood split into pieces small enough to catch fire easily from burning tinder requires different processing than the larger pieces needed to maintain steady heat for hours without attention. The ratio of different wood sizes must be planned to ensure adequate supplies of each type throughout the winter months. Seasoning wood during winter presents challenges different from traditional wood preparation, as wood cut during cold weather contains less moisture, but may freeze before it can dry properly. Freshly cut wood must be stacked in locations where air circulation allows drying, while protection from snow and rain prevents additional moisture absorption. The stacking patterns must allow airflow between pieces, while creating stable piles that will not collapse under snow loads or high winds. Storage of processed fuel wood requires protection from moisture, while maintaining easy access during severe weather, when trips to wood storage areas must be brief and efficient. Wood storage areas are often attached to cottages or located in separate structures that provide weather protection, while keeping fuel supplies close enough for safe access during blizzards or extreme cold snaps. The storage areas must allow air circulation that prevents moisture buildup, while protecting wood from snow and rain that would increase moisture content and reduce burning efficiency. Carrying wood from storage to cottage requires techniques that minimize exposure time while transporting sufficient fuel to maintain fires for extended periods. Wood is often bundled into loads that can be carried efficiently while allowing the carrier to maintain balance on icy or snow-covered paths. These bundles must be sized appropriately for the carrier's strength, while maximizing the amount of fuel transported in each trip from storage to cottage. Fire loading strategies determine how fuel wood is arranged in fires to achieve specific heat output and burning duration goals, while conserving fuel supplies that must last until spring. Different loading patterns create different burning characteristics, with some arrangements producing intense heat for short periods, while others provide steady, moderate heat that lasts for hours. Understanding these patterns allows fire tenders to match fuel consumption to heating needs, while avoiding waste of precious wood supplies. Banking techniques for extending burn times involve arranging wood and controlling airflow to maintain combustion, while minimizing fuel consumption during periods when active fire tending is not possible. Large logs are positioned to burn slowly from one end, while smaller pieces provide the initial heat needed to start the larger fuel burning. The fire is then partially covered with ash to control oxygen flow and maintain steady burning without the rapid fuel consumption of fully active fires. Emergency fuel sources become crucial when primary wood supplies are exhausted or inaccessible due to extreme weather conditions. These alternative fuels include dried animal dung, which burns cleanly when properly prepared and provides steady heat output comparable to wood. Furniture, building materials, and other wooden objects can provide emergency fuel, but burning these items requires careful consideration of their other survival value and the toxic smoke that some treated or painted materials may produce. Fuel conservation strategies help extend limited wood supplies through more efficient burning techniques and better fire management practices. These strategies include banking fires more effectively, using smaller fires supplemented by body heat and insulation, and timing heating activities to coincide with natural temperature variations throughout the day and night. Conservation becomes increasingly important as winter progresses and wood supplies diminish, while the end of winter remains weeks or months away. Ash management from constant wood burning produces large quantities of ash that must be handled safely while taking advantage of ash's usefulness for other survival purposes. Wood ash contains potassium compounds that can be used for soap making, while fine ash serves as an abrasive for cleaning and polishing metal tools and equipment. Ash storage requires containers that protect the material from moisture while keeping it accessible for its various uses throughout the winter months. Tool maintenance for wood cutting equipment requires techniques that keep axes, saws, and splitting wedges in working condition, despite the harsh conditions and heavy use they receive during winter fuel preparation. Axe heads must be kept sharp through regular filing and stone sharpening, while handles require inspection and maintenance to prevent breakage that could leave families without essential wood processing tools during critical survival periods. Sounds emerge, whispers, conversations carried on with voices deliberately kept low to conserve energy, while sharing information essential for group survival decisions that affect everyone sheltering together through the endless winter nights. Communication within cottages requires techniques that allow necessary coordination while minimizing the physical energy expenditure that speaking normally would require when every calorie must be conserved for maintaining body heat and performing essential survival tasks. The development of winter communication patterns reflects the reality that normal conversation consumes energy and produces moisture through exhaled breath, both of which affect the carefully maintained environment within heated cottages. Families develop abbreviated speech patterns and gesture systems that convey necessary information with minimum vocal effort, while reducing the amount of warm, moist air that escapes from lungs with each spoken word. These communication adaptations become second nature after weeks of practice, creating intimate understanding between family members who must coordinate their survival efforts perfectly. Hand signals supplement whispered conversations, providing ways to communicate across cottage interiors without disturbing sleeping family members or alerting everyone to private conversations between individuals. These signals often develop organically within families, with specific gestures indicating common needs like requests for water, food, or assistance with fire tending. Children learn these communication systems naturally, becoming fluent in the silent language that allows coordination without energy expenditure. Planning conversations occur during the warmest parts of days when energy can be allocated to discussions about resource management, work assignments, and preparations for changing conditions that may affect survival strategies. These planning sessions require balancing the need for thorough discussion against energy conservation, with important decisions receiving adequate consideration, while avoiding extended debates that consume precious calories and produce excessive moisture in cottage air. Information sharing between cottages relies on brief encounters during essential outdoor activities like water collection or fuel gathering, when neighbors can exchange crucial information about weather observations, resource availability, and community survival strategies. These conversations must be conducted quickly to minimize exposure to dangerous cold, while ensuring that vital information reaches everyone who needs it for their survival planning. Weather reporting becomes a community responsibility, where individuals share observations about changing conditions that may affect everyone's survival strategies and resource allocation decisions. A neighbor's observation about wind direction changes or cloud formations that suggest approaching storms can provide advance warning that allows families to complete essential preparations before conditions become too dangerous for outdoor work. This information sharing creates an informal network that enhances everyone's ability to predict and prepare for changing conditions. Resource-sharing communications involve delicate negotiations about lending tools, sharing food supplies, or providing assistance that requires balancing individual family needs against community survival requirements. These discussions often occur through intermediaries who can facilitate agreements while maintaining relationships between families who must continue cooperating throughout the remaining winter months. The success of these negotiations often determines whether struggling families survive or succumb to resource shortages. Emergency communication systems provide ways to summon help during medical emergencies, accidents, or other crisis situations when immediate assistance means the difference between life and death. These systems often involve predetermined signals like specific patterns of knocking on walls or calls that carry meaning understood by neighboring families. The systems must function even during severe weather when normal travel between cottages is impossible. Storytelling communication serves multiple purposes beyond entertainment, functioning as a method for transmitting survival knowledge, maintaining social bonds, and managing the psychological stress of prolonged confinement during extreme weather conditions. The stories told during winter evenings often contain practical information embedded in narrative forms that make crucial knowledge memorable and engaging, while providing shared experiences that reinforce community bonds. Teaching through communication ensures that survival knowledge passes from experienced adults to children and younger family members who will need these skills for their own survival in future winters. This teaching often occurs through guided participation in survival tasks, with experienced family members providing verbal instruction and correction that helps novices develop competence in essential skills, while avoiding dangerous mistakes that could threaten family survival. Conflict resolution communication becomes essential when prolonged confinement and survival stress create tensions between family members who must continue cooperating despite personal disagreements or personality conflicts. Families develop techniques for addressing conflicts quickly and quietly, resolving disputes before they escalate into confrontations that could disrupt the cooperation essential for survival. These techniques often involve established protocols for decision-making and resource allocation that minimize opportunities for disagreement. Medical communication involves sharing information about illness symptoms, injury assessment, and treatment decisions when professional medical care is unavailable, and family members must diagnose and treat health problems using traditional knowledge and available resources. This communication requires balancing honesty about serious conditions against maintaining morale and hope that affects everyone's psychological ability to continue survival efforts. Privacy communication allows individuals to maintain personal dignity and autonomy, despite the complete lack of physical privacy that results from families living in single-room cottages for months at a time. Families develop systems for indicating when individuals need personal space or time for private activities, creating psychological privacy even when physical separation is impossible. Religious communication provides spiritual comfort and maintains cultural practices that give meaning and structure to survival efforts while connecting current hardships to larger systems of belief and community identity. These communications often involve prayers, ritual observances, and discussions of religious teachings that provide psychological support during the most difficult periods of winter survival. Memory communication involves the collective effort to remember and preserve important information about successful survival strategies, resource locations, and techniques that proved effective during previous winters. This information must be maintained accurately and shared completely to ensure that future survival efforts benefit from accumulated community knowledge about dealing with extreme conditions. Planning for spring communication begins during the deepest winter months, with discussions about seed preservation, tool maintenance, and preparations for agricultural activities that must begin immediately when weather permits. These conversations help maintain hope and purpose during the darkest periods, while ensuring that families are prepared to take advantage of improving conditions when winter finally ends. The creak of leather sounds through the cottage as boots and clothing shift with the movements of bodies seeking warmth. Each piece of leather representing hours of skilled work that transforms animal hides into materials essential for survival when temperatures drop far below what human skin can endure. Leatherworking during winter requires techniques adapted for working with materials that become stiff and brittle in extreme cold, while producing items that must function reliably when flexibility and durability determine whether extremities remain functional or succumb to frostbite. Hide preparation begins with skins from animals slaughtered during late autumn, when cold weather helps preserve the raw materials, while families have time to process hides before survival activities consume all available time and energy. The initial preparation requires removing all meat and fat from hide surfaces, work that must be completed quickly before decomposition begins and ruins the hide for leather production. This cleaning process uses sharp knives and scrapers that remove tissue while avoiding cuts that would weaken the finished leather. The tanning process transforms raw hides into leather through chemical treatments that preserve the material and give it the flexibility and durability required for winter clothing and equipment. Traditional tanning uses materials available in medieval communities, including oak bark that contains tannins, animal brains that provide oils and enzymes, and wood ash that creates alkaline conditions necessary for proper hide processing. Each tanning method produces leather with different characteristics suited for specific uses. Brain tanning produces soft, flexible leather ideal for clothing that must move with the body while providing insulation and protection from wind and moisture. The process begins with working brain tissue into a paste that is rubbed thoroughly into cleaned hides, with the natural oils and enzymes breaking down proteins that would otherwise make the hide stiff and brittle. This treatment must be repeated several times with thorough working of the hide between applications to ensure complete penetration of the tanning agents. Bark tanning creates firmer leather suitable for boots, tool handles, and equipment that requires durability and resistance to moisture and wear. Oak bark is ground into powder and mixed with water to create tanning solutions that slowly penetrate hide fibers over periods of weeks or months. The hides are submerged in progressively stronger tanning solutions, with regular movement and turning ensuring even treatment throughout the thickness of the hide. Smoking leather provides additional preservation, while creating water resistance that helps leather items maintain their properties when exposed to snow and moisture during winter use. The smoking process requires controlled exposure to smoke from specific wood types that produce compounds that penetrate leather fibers and create barriers against moisture and bacterial decay. This smoking must be done gradually to avoid overheating that would make leather brittle and prone to cracking. Working leather into finished products requires tools and techniques that shape the processed hides into boots, gloves, clothing, and equipment, while maintaining the material's protective properties. Leather cutting uses sharp knives that slice cleanly through hide without tearing or creating weak spots that could lead to failure during use. The cutting patterns must account for the natural grain and strength directions in hides, positioning seams and stress points to take advantage of the leather's strongest characteristics. Sewing leather requires needles and thread capable of penetrating thick, tough material, while creating seams that remain strong under the stress of winter use. Leather needles are often made from bone or metal, shaped with points that can pierce hide without creating holes larger than necessary. The thread used for leather sewing is often made from sinew or twisted plant fibers that provide strength and flexibility, while resisting the moisture and temperature changes that would weaken other thread materials. Waterproofing treatments for finished leather items help maintain their protective properties when exposed to snow, moisture, and the freeze-thaw cycles that can damage untreated leather. Animal fats, beeswax, and plant-based oils are worked into leather surfaces to create barriers that repel water while maintaining flexibility. These treatments must be reapplied periodically as use and weather exposure gradually remove the protective coatings. Boot construction requires understanding foot anatomy and movement patterns that determine how leather must be shaped and reinforced to provide protection while allowing normal walking and working activities. The boot sole must be thick enough to insulate feet from frozen ground, while remaining flexible enough to allow natural foot movement. Multiple layers of leather are often used, with softer inner layers providing comfort and firmer outer layers providing durability and protection. Fitting leather clothing requires techniques that account for the multiple layers of other clothing that must be worn underneath leather outer garments during extreme cold conditions. Leather items must be large enough to accommodate insulating layers while remaining small enough to trap warm air effectively. The fitting process often involves multiple adjustments and modifications as the leather stretches and conforms to the wearer's body over time. Repair techniques for leather items become essential skills when replacement items cannot be obtained, and existing equipment must continue functioning despite damage from heavy use and harsh conditions. Leather repair involves cleaning damaged areas, applying patches or reinforcements, and re-sewing seams that have failed under stress. These repairs must restore both strength and weather resistance while using available materials and tools. Maintenance of leather items requires regular cleaning, conditioning, and treatment that preserves the material's properties despite constant exposure to moisture, dirt, and temperature extremes. This maintenance includes removing salt and dirt that can damage leather fibers, applying oils and fats that maintain flexibility, and checking for wear or damage that requires immediate attention before it becomes serious enough to cause equipment failure. Storage of leather items during periods when they are not in active use requires conditions that prevent moisture damage, insect infestation, and deterioration from temperature changes. Leather storage often involves wrapping items in cloth, positioning them away from moisture sources, and including aromatic herbs that repel insects while absorbing excess moisture that could cause mold or bacterial growth. Alternative leather sources become important when traditional animal hides are not available in sufficient quantities to meet winter survival needs. Fish skins can be processed into leather suitable for some applications, while bird skins provide materials for specialized items like waterproof containers or insulating layers. These alternative materials require different processing techniques, but can supplement traditional leather sources when necessary. Toolmaking from leather includes items like tool handles, equipment covers, and containers that support other survival activities while taking advantage of leather's unique properties of strength, flexibility, and weather resistance. Leather tool handles provide better grip and insulation than wood or metal alternatives, while leather covers protect metal tools from moisture and provide safer handling surfaces when tools become painfully cold to touch. Emergency leather work involves quick repairs and modifications that must be completed with minimal tools and materials when equipment failure threatens survival during extreme conditions. These emergency techniques include temporary patches, field repairs using available materials, and modifications that extend the useful life of damaged leather items until proper repairs can be completed under better conditions. The story continues to unfold as winter deepens its grip on the village, revealing survival techniques that have sustained human life through countless generations of bitter cold. The cottage interior holds secrets that extend far beyond the obvious necessities of fire and shelter, encompassing a complex web of knowledge that transforms simple spaces into complete survival systems capable of sustaining life when the outside world becomes utterly hostile to human existence. Metal gleams dully in the firelight, each piece of iron representing precious resources that must be maintained and protected throughout the winter months, when replacement becomes impossible and failure means the difference between survival and death. The few metal tools owned by peasant families serve multiple purposes, with each knife, needle, and cooking implement designed to perform various functions that maximize utility while minimizing the precious iron required for their construction. A single knife serves as cutting tool, eating utensil, weapon, and precision instrument for delicate work that requires sharp edges and careful control. Iron maintenance during extreme cold requires understanding how metal behaves when temperatures drop far below freezing, creating conditions where tools can become brittle and prone to breaking under normal use. Metal contracts as it cools, creating stress points where different metals or metal and wood joints can separate or crack. Tool handles made from wood must be fitted with techniques that account for this differential expansion and contraction, preventing loose heads that could separate from handles during critical use. Sharpening tools presents particular challenges when working conditions make precision difficult and when the tools themselves become painful to handle as metal conducts cold directly to skin contact. Whetstones must be kept from freezing solid, as frozen stones cannot effectively sharpen metal and may crack when used. The sharpening process often occurs near the fire, where warmth keeps both stones and tools at workable temperatures. But this positioning requires careful attention to prevent sparks from igniting clothing or other flammable materials. Oil treatments for metal tools help prevent rust formation that accelerates in the moist conditions created by cooking, breathing, and other activities that produce water vapor within cottage environments. Animal fats and plant oils are worked into metal surfaces to create protective barriers against moisture, but these treatments must be reapplied regularly as use and cleaning remove the protective coatings. The selection of oils affects both protection effectiveness and the tool's suitability for food preparation, as rancid oils can contaminate food and create health risks. Storage of metal tools requires protection from moisture, while maintaining accessibility for daily use throughout the winter months. Tools are often wrapped in oiled cloth or leather covers that provide barriers against humidity, while allowing easy access when tools are needed quickly. The storage locations must balance protection requirements against convenience, as tools stored too far from work areas may not be retrieved during emergency situations when immediate access becomes crucial for survival. Repair techniques for damaged metal tools become essential skills when professional smiths are unavailable and when tool failure threatens survival activities that depend on sharp, functional implements. Cold welding, grinding, and reshaping techniques allow families to restore damaged tools using available materials and simple equipment. These repairs may not restore tools to original condition, but they can extend useful life significantly when replacement tools cannot be obtained. The sound of spinning fills the cottage during the long evening hours, as wool fibers twist into thread through the repetitive motions that transform raw materials into the foundation of winter clothing and blankets essential for survival. The spinning wheel, when available, represents a significant investment in survival technology that increases thread production efficiency while freeing hands for other essential tasks during the precious daylight hours when outdoor work must be completed despite dangerous cold conditions. Hand spinning using simple spindles requires techniques that produce consistent thread quality, while conserving the energy required for the repetitive motions that continue for hours at a time. The spinner must maintain steady rhythm and tension that creates thread strong enough for weaving, while avoiding variations that would create weak spots in finished cloth. This work often continues by firelight during the long winter evenings, providing productive activity that contributes to family survival while requiring minimal fuel consumption for lighting. Fiber. Preparation begins with cleaning and combing wool to align fibers and remove debris that would create irregularities in spun thread. Cards made from leather studded with metal teeth comb wool fibers into parallel alignment while removing vegetable matter and short fibers that would weaken finished thread. This preparation work requires patience and skill to achieve fiber consistency that produces strong, even thread suitable for weaving into durable cloth. Thread production rates determine how quickly families can convert raw wool into finished cloth needed for clothing repairs, new garments, and blankets that provide essential insulation during the coldest months. Experienced spinners develop techniques that maximize production while maintaining quality, often spinning continuously during evening hours when other work cannot be performed due to darkness and cold conditions. Quality control during thread production involves testing thread strength and consistency throughout the spinning process, identifying and correcting problems before they affect large quantities of finished thread. Weak or uneven thread must be respun to prevent failures in finished cloth that could compromise clothing integrity during extreme weather conditions, when garment failure poses serious survival risks. Different fiber types require varying spinning techniques that account for the natural characteristics of wool from different animals and different parts of the same fleece. Coarse outer wool spins into strong thread, suitable for outer garments and heavy blankets, while softer inner wool creates thread appropriate for undergarments and items that contact skin directly. Understanding these differences allows spinners to match thread characteristics to specific clothing requirements. Winding and storing finished thread requires techniques that prevent tangling while protecting the thread from moisture and pest damage during storage periods that may extend for months before the thread is used for weaving. Thread is wound onto wooden bobbins or formed into skeins that can be hung from cottage rafters, where air circulation keeps the thread dry while protecting it from rodent damage that could destroy months of spinning work. Color considerations for thread production involve understanding which natural dyes remain available during winter months and how different colors affect the psychological well-being of families confined to small spaces for extended periods. Bright colors created from stored plant materials and mineral sources provide visual relief from the monotonous grays and browns that dominate winter landscapes, contributing to morale maintenance that affects survival motivation during the most difficult periods. Weaving preparation requires organizing thread supplies and preparing looms for cloth production that must be completed efficiently to maximize productive use of available time and materials. Simple looms constructed from wood allow families to produce cloth from their own thread, creating textiles specifically designed for their survival needs while avoiding dependence on trade that becomes impossible during severe winter weather. The loom's setup process involves threading the complex arrangements of warp and weft threads that create the foundation for woven cloth, work that requires precision and patience, while working in dim light and cold conditions that make fine manipulation difficult. Mistakes in loom preparation can waste significant quantities of thread and time, making careful attention to setup procedures essential for successful cloth production. Weaving techniques vary based on the intended use of finished cloth, with different thread arrangements and weaving patterns creating fabrics with specific characteristics suited for particular applications. Heavy, dense weaves create wind-resistant outer garments, while looser weaves produce fabrics that provide insulation through trapped air while remaining flexible enough for comfortable movement. Cloth finishing involves treatments that improve the durability and weather resistance of woven fabric, while maintaining the characteristics that make the cloth suitable for its intended use. Fulling processes use water and mechanical action to tighten weave structures and create denser fabrics that resist wind and moisture penetration. These finishing treatments must be completed carefully to avoid damaging the cloth or altering its properties beyond the desired specifications. Steam rises from cooking pots as precious food supplies transform into meals that must provide maximum nutrition, while conserving fuel and ingredients that cannot be replaced until spring arrives with new growing seasons and restored trade connections. Cooking during extreme winter conditions requires techniques that extract every possible calorie from available ingredients while creating foods that provide both physical nourishment and psychological comfort during the long months of survival-focused existence. Pot construction from clay or metal determines cooking capabilities and affects fuel requirements for meal preparation throughout the winter months. Large clay vessels distribute heat evenly and retain warmth long after removal from fires, making them ideal for slow-cooking tough preserved meats and dried vegetables that require extended heating to become palatable. Metal pots heat quickly and allow precise temperature control, but require more fuel to maintain cooking temperatures and provide less heat retention for keeping food warm after cooking. Fire management for cooking requires understanding how different fire configurations provide the heat characteristics needed for various cooking methods while conserving precious fuel supplies. High, hot fires quickly bring water to boiling and sear meats to seal in flavors and nutrients, while low, steady fires provide the gentle heat needed for long, slow cooking that tenderizes preserved foods and extracts maximum nutrition from limited ingredients. Water heating presents ongoing challenges when water sources may be frozen solid and when the fuel required to melt ice or snow significantly reduces the energy available for actual cooking. Efficient water heating techniques minimize fuel consumption while providing the heated water essential for cooking grains, preparing beverages, and cleaning cooking implements that must remain sanitary to prevent illness during periods when medical care is unavailable. Ingredient preparation transforms stored foods into forms suitable for cooking, while maximizing nutritional value and palatability of meals created from limited supplies. Dried vegetables require soaking and careful cooking to restore texture and flavor, while preserved meats need preparation techniques that remove excess salt and restore tenderness without wasting nutrients or creating unpalatable results. Seasoning limited ingredient selections requires creativity and knowledge of how different flavor combinations can make repetitive meals more appealing, while providing variety that maintains appetite and morale during long periods when food choices remain severely restricted. Preserved herbs, dried vegetables, and stored spices become precious resources that transform basic ingredients into meals that provide psychological as well as physical nourishment. Cooking timing coordinates meal preparation with other essential survival activities, while ensuring that food is ready when family members need nourishment to maintain their energy for survival tasks. Meals must be planned around fire management schedules, water availability, and the daily rhythm of activities that keep families alive during extreme weather conditions. Portion control ensures that limited food supplies last throughout the winter, while providing adequate nutrition for all family members according to their age, size, and activity levels. Adults performing heavy physical work require larger portions, while children and elderly family members need carefully calculated amounts that meet their nutritional needs without wasting precious food resources. Food temperature management keeps cooked meals warm enough to provide comfort and aid digestion, while avoiding waste of fuel needed to reheat food that cools too quickly in cold cottage environments. Hot stones heated in cooking fires can keep food warm for hours after cooking, while insulated containers created from baskets lined with cloth help maintain food temperature without additional fuel consumption. Cleanup procedures for cooking implements must be completed efficiently while conserving heated water and maintaining sanitation standards that prevent illness during periods when contaminated food or water could prove fatal. Cleaning techniques use minimal water while ensuring that cooking pots and utensils remain safe for food preparation throughout the winter months. Waste management from food preparation requires disposing of scraps and unusable materials in ways that prevent attracting rodents or creating unsanitary conditions within cottage environments. Food waste can often be used for animal feed or composting that will benefit spring gardens, but storage and handling of these materials must prevent contamination and pest problems during winter months. Meal planning extends beyond individual meals to encompass weekly and monthly strategies that ensure balanced nutrition, while rationing limited supplies throughout the entire winter period. This planning requires understanding how different foods complement each other nutritionally, while creating meal combinations that provide variety and maintain family morale during the most challenging survival periods. Special occasion meals provide psychological benefits that justify using slightly larger portions or precious ingredients to create foods that offer comfort and maintain cultural traditions during the darkest winter periods. These special meals help maintain family bonds and provide hope that connects current hardships to better times that will return with spring's arrival. Breathing becomes visible in the cold cottage air as temperatures drop low enough that each exhalation creates small clouds of vapor that carry away precious body heat, while providing visual evidence of the extreme conditions that challenge human survival every moment of every day throughout the long winter months. Managing breathing and the heat loss it represents requires techniques that conserve warmth while maintaining adequate oxygen intake for survival activities that demand physical exertion despite dangerous environmental conditions. Respiratory adaptation to extreme cold involves understanding how breathing patterns affect heat conservation while ensuring adequate oxygen supply for physical work and basic metabolic functions. Shallow breathing reduces heat loss but may not provide sufficient oxygen for demanding tasks, while deep breathing supplies adequate oxygen but carries away significant body heat with each exhalation. Finding the optimal balance requires understanding individual needs and adjusting breathing patterns based on activity levels and environmental conditions. Protecting airways from extreme cold prevents damage to lung tissues and respiratory passages that can occur when air temperatures drop far below freezing. And normal breathing exposes delicate internal tissues to conditions that can cause frostbite or other cold injuries. Breathing through cloth coverings or warming air by holding it briefly in the mouth before inhalation helps prevent cold injury while maintaining necessary oxygen intake. Indoor air quality becomes a critical survival factor when cottages must be sealed against cold infiltration, while maintaining breathable air for families confined to small spaces for months at a time. The balance between heat conservation and air quality requires understanding how different activities affect oxygen levels and air purity, while managing ventilation that provides fresh air without losing essential heat. Carbon dioxide buildup from human respiration and fire combustion can create dangerous conditions in sealed cottage environments, requiring ventilation strategies that remove contaminated air while minimizing heat loss. Understanding the signs of poor air quality and techniques for improving ventilation without compromising heating efficiency becomes essential knowledge for winter survival in enclosed spaces. Moisture management from breathing and other activities prevents condensation problems that can create dampness, mold growth, and structural damage, while contributing to uncomfortable living conditions that affect health and morale during extended confinement periods. Controlling humidity levels requires balancing moisture sources against ventilation and absorption techniques that maintain comfortable conditions without wasting heat. Sleep breathing patterns affect both heat conservation and air quality during the long winter nights when families spend many hours in close proximity within sealed cottage environments. Understanding how sleeping positions and breathing techniques can minimize heat loss while maintaining adequate ventilation helps optimize rest periods that provide essential recovery from the physical and psychological stresses of winter survival. Working breathing techniques help maintain adequate oxygen supply during physical tasks that must be performed despite extreme cold conditions, while managing exertion levels that prevent dangerous overheating, followed by rapid cooling when work stops. These techniques become particularly important during emergency situations when physical demands increase, while environmental conditions become even more challenging. Air circulation patterns within cottage spaces affect both heating efficiency and air quality, requiring understanding of how warm and cold air move through enclosed spaces and how this movement can be managed to optimize both heat distribution and ventilation. Simple techniques for directing airflow can significantly improve cottage comfort, while reducing fuel requirements for maintaining livable temperatures. Emergency ventilation procedures provide methods for rapidly improving air quality during situations when carbon dioxide buildup or other air contamination threatens family safety, while minimizing heat loss during the brief periods when emergency ventilation becomes necessary. These procedures must be understood and practiced before emergencies occur, as confusion during crisis situations could lead to dangerous mistakes. Breathing exercises help maintain lung capacity and respiratory health during extended periods of reduced activity and limited fresh air exposure that characterize winter survival conditions. These exercises can be performed without significant heat loss, while contributing to overall health maintenance during months when physical condition must be preserved despite challenging environmental conditions. Recovery breathing techniques help restore normal respiratory function after periods of extreme exertion or cold exposure that stress respiratory systems beyond normal limits. Understanding how to safely recover from breathing difficulties while avoiding further heat loss or respiratory damage provides essential skills for surviving situations where physical demands exceed normal capabilities. Respiratory illness prevention becomes crucial when medical care is unavailable and when respiratory problems could prove fatal during extreme survival conditions. Understanding early warning signs of respiratory illness and techniques for preventing and treating breathing problems using available resources helps maintain family health during the vulnerable winter months. Group breathing considerations account for how multiple people sharing small enclosed spaces affect air quality and heating requirements, while managing the social and psychological aspects of maintaining respiratory health during extended periods of close confinement. Coordinating breathing-related activities and managing shared air resources becomes an important component of group survival strategies. Human sounds echo softly through the village as life continues despite the brutal conditions, each voice representing successful adaptation to circumstances that would challenge even modern survival techniques and equipment. The sounds of survival create a complex audio landscape that provides information about community conditions, while offering reassurance that human life persists, despite nature's assault on the small settlement, struggling through another winter that tests the limits of human endurance and ingenuity. Community cooperation emerges through necessity, as individual families discover that survival requires sharing resources, knowledge, and labor in ways that create mutual dependence and collective security against conditions that could overwhelm isolated households. This cooperation develops naturally as families realize that helping neighbors increases everyone's chances of survival, while creating social bonds that provide psychological support during the most difficult periods. Resource-sharing agreements develop between families with different strengths and supplies, creating informal networks that distribute survival capabilities more evenly throughout the community, while ensuring that temporary shortages or equipment failures do not result in family deaths that could be prevented through community support. These agreements often involve complex exchanges of labor, materials, and knowledge that benefit all participants. Knowledge exchange between families ensures that survival techniques and observations spread throughout the community, creating collective wisdom that improves everyone's adaptation to changing conditions, while preventing the loss of crucial information that could occur if knowledgeable individuals become incapacitated or die during the winter months. This knowledge sharing often occurs during brief social contacts when weather permits limited movement between households. Labor cooperation allows families to combine their efforts for tasks that exceed individual capabilities or that can be completed more efficiently through group work, while sharing the physical demands that might exhaust individual families if attempted alone. Coordinated work parties tackle projects like major repairs, fuel gathering, and emergency responses that benefit from multiple participants working together. Emergency response systems develop within communities to provide rapid assistance when accidents, illness, or equipment failures threaten individual families with situations they cannot handle alone, while ensuring that emergency aid does not compromise the survival capabilities of families providing assistance. These systems require balancing individual family needs against community survival requirements. Communication networks maintain connections between households despite weather conditions that prevent normal social interaction, using signals, messages, and brief contacts to share essential information, while monitoring the condition of all community members throughout the winter survival period. These networks help ensure that families in difficulty receive assistance before their situations become critical. Leadership structures emerge within communities to coordinate collective decisions and resource allocation, while managing conflicts that could disrupt the cooperation essential for group survival, with leadership roles often falling to individuals with particular expertise or experience, rather than traditional social hierarchies that may not reflect survival capabilities. Social support systems provide psychological assistance and morale maintenance that helps community members cope with the stress, isolation, and hardship that characterize extended survival periods, while maintaining cultural practices and social bonds that give meaning and purpose to survival efforts beyond simple biological persistence. Conflict resolution mechanisms help communities address disputes and disagreements that inevitably arise when people are confined together under stressful conditions for extended periods, while ensuring that conflicts do not escalate into confrontations that could disrupt community cooperation or result in violence that threatens group survival. Security arrangements protect communities from external threats while managing internal security concerns that could develop when survival stress affects individual behavior and decision-making capabilities, with security measures balanced against the need to maintain community cooperation and trust essential for collective survival efforts. Trade relationships with other communities or traveling merchants provide opportunities to exchange surplus resources for needed supplies while maintaining connections to larger economic and social networks that extend beyond the immediate survival community, though such trade may be impossible during the worst weather conditions. Cultural preservation activities maintain traditions, practices, and knowledge that give communities identity and continuity beyond immediate survival needs, while providing activities and purposes that help maintain psychological health during periods when survival activities alone might not provide sufficient meaning and motivation for continued effort. Planning for spring begins during the depths of winter with discussions and preparations for agricultural activities, building repairs, and community projects that must be ready to begin immediately when weather conditions improve, while maintaining hope and forward-looking perspective that helps sustain motivation during the darkest periods of winter survival. Human adaptation reveals itself through countless small adjustments and innovations that accumulate into comprehensive survival systems capable of sustaining life under conditions that would quickly prove fatal without the accumulated wisdom of generations who faced similar challenges and developed techniques that transform hostile environments into livable spaces where families can survive and communities can persist through the longest, coldest winters that nature can create. Human ingenuity manifests in the countless small innovations and adaptations that transform basic materials into specialized tools and techniques essential for winter survival, with each family developing modifications and improvements that reflect their particular circumstances and resources, while contributing to the collective knowledge that helps entire communities adapt to extreme conditions. Psychological adaptation techniques help individuals and families maintain mental health and motivation during extended periods of confinement, hardship, and constant survival pressure, while managing stress, fear, and despair that could undermine the determination and cooperation essential for successful winter survival. Physical conditioning maintenance ensures that family members preserve strength, flexibility, and health, despite reduced activity levels and limited nutrition that characterize winter survival conditions, while preparing bodies for the increased physical demands that will accompany spring activities and the return to normal seasonal work patterns. The story continues to unfold through these intricate details of survival, each element contributing to the larger picture of how human communities adapted to conditions that tested every aspect of their ingenuity, cooperation, and determination to preserve life through the harshest challenges that medieval winters could present to families determined to see another spring. As the evening deepens and the cottage settles into its rhythm of survival, the careful choreography of winter life reveals itself through movements that have been refined across countless generations. Each gesture, each placement of hand or foot, each breath taken represents knowledge accumulated through necessity and preserved through practice. The dance of survival continues without pause, as families navigate the delicate balance between conservation and consumption that determines whether they will see another dawn. Rationing becomes an art form that extends far beyond simple food distribution, encompassing every resource from fuel wood to lamp oil, from stored grain to precious salt that preserves meat and seasons bland winter meals. The process requires mathematical precision, combined with intuitive understanding of how consumption patterns change throughout the winter months, with early winter allowing slightly larger portions, while deep winter demands strict conservation that accounts for the weeks or months remaining before spring restoration becomes possible. Each family member receives allocations calculated according to their age, size, and contribution to survival activities, with pregnant women and nursing mothers receiving additional provisions, while elderly family members who contribute less physical labor accept reduced rations that reflect their diminished caloric needs. The psychology of rationing affects family dynamics in ways that require careful management to prevent conflicts that could disrupt the cooperation essential for survival. Children must be taught to accept limited portions without complaint, while understanding that current restrictions ensure future availability of food when supplies might otherwise be exhausted. Adults demonstrate restraint and fairness in distribution, while managing their own hunger and the psychological pressure of watching family members receive insufficient food to satisfy their appetites completely. The evening meal becomes a ritual that balances nourishment with conservation, providing enough sustenance to maintain health while preserving stores that must last until agricultural production resumes. Storage monitoring requires daily assessment of remaining supplies combined with projections of consumption rates that account for changing weather conditions and family health needs that may increase or decrease resource requirements. Grain containers are measured and marked to track usage patterns, while preserved meat supplies are inventoried to ensure even distribution throughout the remaining winter months. This monitoring extends beyond simple counting to include quality assessment that identifies spoilage or pest damage before it spreads to contaminate larger quantities of stored food. Families develop systems for rotating stored materials to use older supplies first, while preserving fresher items for later consumption when quality becomes more critical, as other options become exhausted. The mathematics of survival requires understanding relationships between caloric intake, energy expenditure, and resource availability that determine sustainable consumption levels throughout the winter period. Adults engaged in heavy physical work require approximately 3,000 calories daily to maintain their health and working capacity, while children and elderly family members need fewer calories, but still require adequate nutrition to prevent malnutrition that could prove fatal during extreme weather conditions. These calculations must account for the reduced caloric availability of preserved foods compared to fresh ingredients, as well as the additional energy required to maintain body temperature in cold environments that stress metabolic systems beyond normal parameters. Psychological hunger differs from physical hunger in ways that affect family morale and cooperation during extended periods of reduced food intake that characterize winter survival conditions. Physical hunger results from inadequate caloric intake and creates genuine health risks that must be addressed through careful rationing and resource management. Psychological hunger develops when people desire foods that are unavailable, or when reduced variety makes meals less satisfying despite adequate nutritional content. Managing psychological hunger requires understanding how meal presentation, seasoning, and social aspects of eating affect satisfaction levels, while maintaining realistic expectations about food availability during survival periods. Emergency rationing protocols provide guidelines for further reducing consumption when unexpected problems threaten food supplies, or when winter conditions persist longer than normal seasonal patterns would predict. These emergency measures require reducing all rations while prioritizing family members most essential for survival activities, with difficult decisions about resource allocation that balance individual needs against family survival requirements. Emergency rationing may involve eliminating non-essential food items, reducing meal frequency, or implementing more severe restrictions that approach the minimum intake levels required to sustain life until conditions improve or alternative food sources become available. The sound of grinding echoes through the cottage as grain transforms into flour through the repetitive circular motions that require strength and endurance from family members who take turns operating the heavy stone mills that reduce stored wheat and barley into forms suitable for bread making. Hand mills constructed from carefully shaped stones create flour through friction and pressure that crushes grain kernels while preserving the nutritional content essential for winter sustenance. The grinding process produces different grades of flour depending on the fineness of grinding and the number of times grain passes through the mill stones, with coarser meals suitable for porridges and animal feed, while finer flours create bread with better texture and digestibility. Mill maintenance requires regular attention to grinding stone surfaces that wear smooth with use and lose their effectiveness at reducing grain to flour consistently. Stone dressing involves using metal tools to carve new grooves and rough surfaces that restore cutting ability, while maintaining proper stone alignment that ensures even grinding without excessive wear on the mill mechanism. This maintenance work requires skill and experience to avoid damaging stones that cannot be easily replaced during winter months, when quarrying and stone cutting become impossible due to frozen ground and unavailable transportation. The rhythm of grinding creates patterns that help pass time during long winter evenings, while providing productive activity that contributes directly to family nutrition and survival. Multiple family members often take turns at the mill, with the repetitive motions providing exercise that helps maintain physical condition during periods of reduced activity, while generating body heat that contributes to cottage warming. The grinding work becomes social activity that allows conversation and story sharing while accomplishing essential food preparation tasks. Flour quality assessment requires understanding how different grinding techniques and grain conditions affect the characteristics of finished flour and its suitability for various cooking applications. Fresh ground flour provides better nutrition and flavor than flour that has been stored for extended periods. But grinding must be timed to balance freshness against the labor and time required for frequent milling operations. The texture, color, and aroma of ground flour indicate grain quality and grinding effectiveness, while revealing problems like moisture content or pest contamination that could affect food safety and storage life. Different grains require varying grinding techniques that account for their natural hardness, moisture content, and structural characteristics that affect how they respond to milling processes. Wheat grinds more easily than barley and produces flour with different baking properties, while oats require special handling to create meals suitable for porridge preparation. Understanding these grain differences allows families to optimize their grinding techniques while managing different grain types according to their specific characteristics and intended uses. Flour storage after grinding requires protection from moisture, pests, and contamination that could destroy the results of hours of milling work, while ensuring accessibility for daily bread making and cooking activities. Ground flour is more vulnerable to spoilage than whole grain, because grinding exposes interior grain surfaces to air and moisture that accelerate deterioration processes. Flour containers must provide complete protection from humidity, while allowing easy access for measuring daily portions without exposing entire flour supplies to contamination risks. Bread-making schedules coordinate grinding activities with baking, routines that ensure fresh flour availability, while managing the time and energy required for both grain processing and bread preparation. Daily bread making requires planning that accounts for grinding time, dough preparation periods, rising schedules, and baking activities that must be completed efficiently to provide fresh bread, while conserving fuel and labor resources. These schedules become more complex when weather conditions affect indoor temperatures that influence dough rising times and baking requirements. Alternative grain processing methods provide backup techniques when mill stones become damaged or when grinding becomes impossible due to equipment problems that cannot be immediately resolved. Pounding grain with wooden mallets creates coarse meals suitable for porridge preparation, while grinding small quantities between flat stones produces flour for emergency bread making. These alternative methods require more labor and produce lower quality results than proper mill grinding, but they ensure continued ability to process stored grain into edible forms when primary equipment fails. Shared grinding arrangements between families allow communities to maintain larger, more efficient mills that serve multiple households, while distributing the labor and maintenance requirements among several families who benefit from improved grain processing capabilities. These shared arrangements require coordination and cooperation that balances individual family needs against community grinding schedules, while ensuring fair access to milling capacity during peak demand periods when multiple families need flour simultaneously. Quality control during grinding involves monitoring flour consistency and identifying problems that could affect bread-making success or food safety during periods when failed batches represent significant waste of precious ingredients. Experienced millers develop techniques for recognizing when grinding produces proper flour texture, while identifying foreign materials or contamination that could create health risks or affect bread quality. This quality control becomes particularly important when grain supplies include materials of questionable condition that must be processed carefully to avoid contaminating good flour with spoiled ingredients. Grinding efficiency measures help families optimize their grain processing activities to achieve maximum flour production with minimum labor investment, while maintaining quality standards necessary for successful bread making and cooking applications. Understanding relationships between grinding time, stone pressure, and flour fineness allows millers to adjust their techniques for different grain types and quality levels, while achieving consistent results that meet family nutrition needs throughout the winter survival period. Clay vessels line cottage walls like silent sentinels, their rounded forms holding the concentrated essence of summer's abundance, transformed into winter's lifeline through preservation techniques that concentrate flavors while extending storage life far beyond what fresh foods could provide. These containers hold more than simple ingredients. They contain the accumulated knowledge of generations who learn to capture seasonal plenty and transform it into forms that remain nutritious and palatable throughout the months when fresh food becomes impossible to obtain through normal agricultural or gathering activities. Fermentation processes create some of winter's most important preserved foods through controlled bacterial activity that transforms fresh ingredients into forms with enhanced nutritional value and extended storage life, while developing complex flavors that provide variety in winter diets otherwise limited to basic preserved meats and stored grains. Sauerkraut fermentation converts fresh cabbage into acidic preserved vegetables rich in vitamins that prevent scurvy and other nutritional diseases that commonly develop during extended periods without fresh plant foods. The fermentation process requires careful temperature control and salt management that creates conditions favorable for beneficial bacteria while preventing harmful organisms that could spoil entire batches of preserved vegetables. Fermented dairy products provide protein and probiotics that support digestive health during winter months, when dietary variety becomes severely limited and when digestive problems could prove dangerous in survival situations where medical care remains unavailable. Cheesemaking transforms milk into concentrated protein sources that remain edible for months when properly prepared and stored, while fermented milk products like buttermilk and kefir provide liquid nutrition that supplements limited water supplies, while contributing essential nutrients often lacking in preserved food diets. The timing of fermentation activities requires understanding seasonal patterns that determine when fresh ingredients become available for preservation, while ensuring that fermentation processes complete successfully before temperatures drop too low to support proper bacterial activity. Late autumn provides the final opportunity to begin fermentation projects that must complete their bacterial processes before winter cold slows or stops the microbial activity essential for proper preservation. These timing considerations require careful coordination between harvest activities and preservation work that must be completed efficiently while ingredients remain at peak quality for fermentation processing. Salt management during fermentation involves understanding how different salt concentrations affect bacterial growth patterns and preservation effectiveness, while balancing salt usage against limited supplies that must serve multiple preservation purposes throughout the winter period. Too little salt allows harmful bacteria to dominate fermentation processes and spoil food supplies, while excessive salt creates environments too harsh for beneficial bacteria, while wasting precious salt resources needed for other preservation activities. Achieving proper salt balance requires experience and understanding of how different foods respond to various salt concentrations during fermentation processes. Container selection for fermentation requires vessels that support bacterial activity while preventing contamination from harmful organisms that could destroy fermentation results and create health risks for families dependent on preserved foods for winter survival. Clay vessels provide ideal fermentation environments because their porous surfaces support beneficial bacterial colonies, while their thermal mass helps maintain stable temperatures that optimize fermentation processes. Wooden containers also work well for certain fermentation projects, but they require proper preparation and maintenance to prevent contamination problems. Monitoring fermentation progress involves understanding visual, aromatic, and tactile indicators that reveal whether bacterial processes proceed successfully or whether problems develop that require immediate intervention to prevent food spoilage and resource loss. Successful fermentation produces characteristic changes in color, texture, and smell that indicate proper bacterial activity, while off odors, unusual colors, or unexpected textures suggest contamination problems that may require discarding entire batches to prevent illness from consuming spoiled food. Temperature management during fermentation requires maintaining conditions that support beneficial bacterial activity while preventing temperature extremes that could kill fermentation organisms or create environments favorable for harmful bacteria that spoil food and create health risks. Fermentation containers are often positioned near heat sources that provide gentle warming without excessive temperatures, while insulation materials help maintain stable conditions despite fluctuating cottage temperatures that result from varying heating effectiveness throughout day and night cycles. Harvesting fermented foods involves understanding when fermentation processes reach optimal completion points that maximize nutritional value and flavor development, while ensuring adequate preservation for long-term storage throughout the winter months. Fermentation timing affects both food quality and storage life, with under-fermented foods lacking proper preservation, while over-fermented products may develop unpleasant flavors or lose nutritional value that reduces their effectiveness as winter food sources. Storage of fermented foods requires techniques that maintain the acidic conditions created during fermentation, while preventing continued bacterial activity that could over-ferment preserved foods and affect their palatability or nutritional content. Fermented foods are often transferred to smaller containers for daily use, while larger quantities remain in fermentation vessels where stable conditions preserve quality throughout the winter storage period. These storage techniques must balance accessibility for daily consumption against preservation requirements that maintain food safety and quality. Integration of fermented foods into winter diets provides essential nutrients and flavors that supplement basic preserved foods, while supporting digestive health during periods when dietary variety becomes severely limited. Fermented vegetables provide vitamins and minerals often lacking in meat and grain diets, while fermented dairy products supply probiotics that maintain intestinal health despite dietary restrictions and stress conditions that affect digestive system function during extended survival periods. Quality assessment of fermented foods requires understanding how successful fermentation affects taste, texture, and nutritional content, while identifying signs of spoilage or contamination that could create health risks when consumed. Properly fermented foods develop characteristic flavors and textures that indicate successful preservation, while unusual tastes or appearances suggest problems that may require discarding food supplies to prevent illness that could prove dangerous during winter survival conditions when medical care remains unavailable and recovery becomes difficult. You imagine the intricate network of relationships that connects every cottage in the village through invisible threads of mutual dependence and shared knowledge that creates collective survival capability, far exceeding what individual families could achieve through isolated efforts. This community web encompasses resource-sharing agreements, knowledge exchange systems, and cooperative labor arrangements that distribute survival capabilities throughout the settlement, while ensuring that temporary shortages or equipment failures do not result in family deaths that could be prevented through community support and coordinated assistance efforts. Neighborhood watch systems develop naturally as families recognize that monitoring each other's welfare increases everyone's survival chances while providing early warning of problems that could affect multiple households if allowed to develop without intervention. These watch systems involve regular communication between adjacent cottages, with family members checking on neighbors during brief outdoor excursions for essential activities like fuel gathering or water collection. The absence of smoke from cottage chimneys or unusual silence from normally active households triggers immediate investigation that can identify medical emergencies, equipment failures, or other problems requiring community assistance. Resource pooling arrangements allow families with different strengths and supplies to combine their assets in ways that improve everyone's survival prospects, while distributing risks that could overwhelm individual households facing unexpected challenges. A family with extensive food stores but limited fuel supplies might trade grain for firewood with neighbors who have abundant fuel but reduced food reserves, creating mutually beneficial exchanges that address everyone's survival needs more effectively than isolated resource management could achieve. These pooling arrangements often involve complex calculations that account for different resource values and family needs, while maintaining fairness that preserves community cooperation. Skill-sharing networks ensure that specialized knowledge and abilities remain available to all community members despite the reality that individual families may lack particular expertise essential for addressing specific survival challenges. An experienced healer shares medical knowledge with other families while receiving assistance with heavy labor that exceeds individual physical capabilities, while skilled craftspeople provide tool repair services in exchange for food supplies or fuel resources. These skill networks create redundancy that prevents the loss of essential capabilities when individual experts become ill or incapacitated during critical survival periods. Communication systems maintain connections between households despite weather conditions that prevent normal social interaction, using signals, messages, and brief contacts to coordinate community activities, while monitoring the welfare of all village members throughout the winter survival period. Simple signal systems using smoke patterns, light signals, or sound codes allow families to communicate basic information about their status and needs without requiring dangerous travel during severe weather conditions. These communication methods help coordinate community responses to emergencies while maintaining social connections that provide psychological support during isolation periods. Collective decision-making processes address community-wide issues that affect all families while managing disagreements and conflicts that could disrupt the cooperation essential for village survival during extreme weather conditions. These processes often involve informal leadership structures that emerge based on expertise and experience rather than traditional social hierarchies, with decision-making authority shifting based on the specific challenges being addressed. Decisions about resource allocation, emergency responses, and community priorities require balancing individual family needs against collective survival requirements, while maintaining consensus that preserves community unity. Emergency response protocols provide rapid assistance when accidents, illness, or equipment failures threaten individual families with situations they cannot handle alone, while ensuring that emergency aid does not compromise the survival capabilities of families providing assistance. These protocols involve predetermined response plans that identify available resources and capable individuals, while establishing priorities that ensure critical assistance reaches families most in need without overwhelming community support capabilities during periods when resources remain limited for everyone. Labor cooperation systems organize community work projects that exceed individual family capabilities while distributing physical demands that might exhaust individual households if attempted alone. Coordinated work parties tackle major projects like community facility maintenance, large-scale food processing activities, and emergency repairs that benefit multiple families while sharing the labor requirements among several households. These cooperation systems require scheduling that accommodates individual family needs while ensuring adequate participation for successful project completion. Knowledge preservation efforts maintain and transmit essential survival information throughout the community, while ensuring that crucial techniques and observations do not become lost if individual knowledge holders become incapacitated or die during the winter months. Systematic knowledge sharing sessions allow experienced community members to teach essential skills to others while documenting important information through storytelling and practical demonstration that creates multiple sources of critical survival knowledge within the community. Conflict resolution mechanisms address disputes and disagreements that inevitably develop when people face extended periods of stress and confinement, while maintaining the cooperation essential for community survival during challenging conditions. These mechanisms often involve respected community members who mediate disagreements while helping conflicting parties find solutions that preserve relationships and maintain the social cohesion necessary for continued cooperation throughout the remaining winter period. Social support networks provide psychological assistance and emotional stability that helps community members cope with the isolation, fear, and hardship that characterize extended survival periods, while maintaining cultural practices and traditions that give meaning and purpose to survival efforts beyond simple biological persistence. These networks involve regular social contact within safety limitations, shared cultural activities that can be conducted despite weather restrictions, and mutual encouragement that helps maintain morale during the most difficult winter periods. Trade relationships with other communities provide opportunities to exchange surplus resources for needed supplies while maintaining connections to larger economic networks that extend beyond immediate village boundaries. Though such trade may become impossible during the most severe weather conditions, when travel becomes too dangerous to attempt. These relationships often involve predetermined agreements about resource exchanges that can be activated when conditions permit travel, with trade goods prepared and stored in anticipation of brief opportunities for commercial contact with other settlements. Planning coordination ensures that community-wide preparations for spring activities begin during winter months, while individual families coordinate their efforts to maximize collective capability for resuming normal seasonal activities when weather conditions improve sufficiently to permit agricultural work and other essential tasks that must commence immediately when environmental conditions permit productive activity to resume after months of survival-focused existence. The landscape beyond cottage walls transforms into an alien world, where familiar landmarks disappear beneath snow accumulations that reshape the entire visual environment, while creating navigation challenges that make simple journeys between nearby locations, dangerous undertakings requiring careful planning, and specialized techniques for safe travel across terrain that bears little resemblance to its summer appearance. Understanding this transformed environment becomes essential for the brief excursions that remain necessary despite weather conditions that make outdoor activity extremely hazardous for anyone lacking proper knowledge and equipment. Snow depth variations create hidden hazards that can trap unwary travelers in deep drifts, while concealing obstacles like fallen trees, stones, or holes that could cause serious injuries during emergency situations when medical care remains unavailable and recovery becomes complicated by extreme weather conditions. Wind patterns cause snow to accumulate unevenly, creating areas where snow remains relatively shallow, while other locations develop drifts several feet deep that could engulf a person completely. Reading these accumulation patterns requires understanding how local topography and vegetation affect wind flow and snow deposition Throughout the winter season, trail marking systems help maintain navigation capability when familiar paths become completely obscured by snow accumulations that eliminate visual landmarks normally used for orientation and direction finding during travel between essential locations. Simple markers like tall poles or distinctive objects positioned at regular intervals create reference points that remain visible above snow levels, while providing guidance for safe passage along established routes. These marking systems require advanced preparation during autumn months, when materials can be gathered and markers can be positioned before snow accumulation makes such preparation work impossible. Emergency shelter knowledge becomes crucial for anyone who becomes lost or stranded during brief outdoor excursions that encounter unexpected weather changes or equipment problems that prevent safe return to cottage facilities. Understanding how to construct temporary windbreaks and insulated shelters using available materials can mean the difference between survival and death during situations where return travel becomes impossible due to deteriorating conditions or physical exhaustion that exceeds individual capability to continue movement toward safety. Weather reading skills help predict changing conditions that affect travel safety and outdoor work schedules, while identifying atmospheric signs that indicate approaching storms or temperature changes that could create dangerous conditions for anyone caught outside cottage protection during severe weather events. Cloud formations, wind direction changes, and temperature fluctuations provide information about weather trends that help determine when brief outdoor activities can be attempted safely and when conditions require remaining inside heated shelters until environmental conditions improve sufficiently for safe travel. Clothing systems for outdoor exposure require layering techniques and specialized equipment that provide maximum protection against extreme cold, while maintaining mobility necessary for essential outdoor tasks that cannot be delayed despite dangerous environmental conditions. Outer garments must shed wind and moisture, while inner layers trap warm air and maintain insulation effectiveness, even when outer clothing becomes wet or damaged during outdoor activities. Understanding how to adjust these clothing systems based on activity levels and changing conditions helps prevent both overheating that leads to dangerous cooling and inadequate protection that allows cold injury to develop. Travel timing takes advantage of daily temperature variations and weather patterns that create brief windows when outdoor movement becomes marginally safer, while avoiding periods when conditions become most dangerous for anyone exposed to environmental extremes. Midday hours often provide slightly warmer temperatures and better visibility that improve travel safety, while early morning and evening periods may offer calmer wind conditions that reduce the wind chill effects that make cold temperatures even more dangerous for exposed travelers. Emergency signaling methods provide ways to summon assistance when outdoor activities result in accidents or situations where individual capability becomes insufficient for safe return to cottage facilities, while ensuring that rescue efforts can locate people who become stranded or lost during emergency situations. Simple signaling devices like whistles, bright cloth markers, or smoke signals can attract attention from community members while providing location information that helps coordinate rescue activities during conditions when searching becomes extremely difficult and dangerous. Route planning for essential outdoor activities identifies the safest paths between necessary destinations while minimizing exposure time and avoiding known hazards that could create dangerous situations during brief excursions for fuel gathering, water collection, or emergency activities that cannot be postponed despite adverse weather conditions. These routes often differ significantly from summer paths, taking advantage of wind protection and avoiding areas where snow accumulation or ice formation creates additional hazards for winter travelers. Group travel procedures ensure that multiple people coordinate their outdoor activities to provide mutual assistance and safety backup during essential excursions, while avoiding situations where entire families could become endangered if outdoor activities encounter unexpected problems or dangerous conditions that exceed individual capability to resolve safely. Group travel involves designated leaders, predetermined signals for communication, and established procedures for handling emergencies that could affect multiple people simultaneously. Equipment maintenance for outdoor activities requires keeping essential tools and safety equipment in working condition, despite harsh conditions and limited indoor space for equipment storage and maintenance activities. Tools used for outdoor work must be protected from moisture and temperature extremes, while remaining accessible for emergency use when immediate availability becomes crucial for safety or survival during unexpected situations that require rapid response with properly functioning equipment. Recovery procedures help people safely warm up and recover normal body function after outdoor exposure that stresses physical systems beyond normal limits, while preventing dangerous complications that could develop when cold-stressed bodies return to heated environments too rapidly. Understanding proper warming techniques and recognizing signs of cold injury helps ensure that necessary outdoor activities do not result in permanent damage or health problems that could compromise individual survival capability during extended winter conditions. Fragments, sharp, cold, metal against stone. The sound of blade maintenance echoes through cottage stillness as essential tools receive the careful attention that keeps them functional despite harsh conditions and constant use that would quickly dull or damage implements that lack proper care and maintenance throughout the demanding winter survival period. Sharpening rhythms. Steady, practiced. The repetitive motion of steel against whetstone creates patterns that mark time, while accomplishing essential maintenance work that cannot be delayed. When tool effectiveness determines success or failure of critical survival activities that depend on sharp, properly maintained cutting implements for food preparation, fuel processing, and emergency tasks. Stone surfaces. Wet, abrasive. Water applied to whetstones creates the proper conditions for effective blade sharpening, while preventing excessive heat buildup that could damage tool steel and reduce cutting effectiveness during maintenance procedures that must be completed carefully to achieve optimal results without wasting time or materials during winter conditions when both become precious resources. Blade angles. Precise. Critical. Understanding proper sharpening angles ensures that tool edges achieve maximum cutting effectiveness, while maintaining durability that allows continued use throughout extended winter periods when replacement tools cannot be obtained, and existing implements must continue functioning despite heavy use and harsh conditions that stress metal beyond normal parameters. Edge testing. Careful, thorough. Checking blade sharpness involves techniques that assess cutting ability without damaging newly sharpened edges, while ensuring that maintenance work achieves the level of sharpness required for specific cutting tasks that range from food preparation to fuel wood processing activities throughout the winter survival period. Handle inspection. Regular, essential. Tool handles require maintenance attention to prevent loosening or cracking that could result in dangerous tool failure during critical use, when broken implements could cause injuries or prevent completion of essential survival tasks that cannot be postponed despite equipment problems or maintenance needs. Tool storage. Protected, organized. Maintaining cutting implements requires storage systems that prevent moisture damage and accidental injury, while keeping tools accessible for immediate use when emergency situations demand rapid access to properly maintained equipment that functions reliably despite harsh environmental conditions and storage limitations within cottage spaces. Repair techniques: improvised, effective. Understanding methods for restoring damaged tools using available materials helps maintain cutting capability when professional repair services remain unavailable and when tool failure threatens activities essential for family survival throughout extended winter conditions that prevent normal equipment replacement or professional maintenance services. Backup tools: hidden, ready. Emergency cutting implements stored in multiple locations provide insurance against primary tool failure, while ensuring continued capability for essential cutting tasks when main tools become damaged or lost during activities that remain necessary, despite harsh conditions and equipment risks that accompany winter survival situations. Safety procedures: practiced, automatic. Proper tool handling techniques prevent accidents that could cause serious injuries during periods when medical care remains unavailable and when healing becomes complicated by harsh conditions and limited resources for treating wounds or injuries that result from careless tool use during essential survival activities. Human voices carry across the frozen village in patterns that speak of endurance and adaptation, each sound representing successful resistance against conditions that would quickly defeat unprepared individuals, while demonstrating the collective strength that emerges when communities face extreme challenges with shared knowledge, mutual support, and determination to preserve life through the harshest tests that nature can present to human settlements struggling through another winter that measures survival in degrees below zero and weeks without relief from cold, that penetrates every aspect of daily existence. The rhythm of survival continues without pause, as another night settles over the village and families prepare once again for the careful dance of conservation and cooperation that carries them through darkness toward dawn, when the cycle begins anew with the same attention to detail, the same careful management of precious resources, and the same quiet determination that has sustained human communities through countless winters and will continue to do so as long as knowledge passes from one generation to the next, and communities remember that survival depends not on individual strength alone, but on the collective wisdom and mutual support that transforms isolated households into resilient communities capable of enduring whatever challenges the winter world presents to those who understand that cooperation and preparation provide the foundation for human persistence in environments that would otherwise prove unsurvivable. The story continues to unfold through these intricate details of medieval winter survival, each element contributing to the larger understanding of how human communities adapted to extreme conditions through ingenuity, cooperation, and the accumulated wisdom of generations who faced similar challenges and developed comprehensive systems for sustaining life when modern conveniences did not exist, and survival depended entirely on knowledge, preparation, and the determination to preserve human life through the longest, coldest nights that winter could create. The rhythm of survival continues through the deepest hours of night, as families across the village settle into the careful choreography of winter existence that has sustained human life through countless generations of bitter cold. In cottage after cottage, the same quiet activities unfold with practiced precision, each movement reflecting knowledge passed down through bloodlines that stretch back to the first humans who learned to transform hostile winter landscapes into spaces where life could persist against all odds. The fire burns lower now, its flames reduced to steady glowing coals that radiate heat with the efficiency born of careful tending and understanding of how wood burns when every piece of fuel represents precious calories preserved for another day. The banking process continues with the methodical placement of ash and the positioning of logs that will burn slowly through the remaining hours until dawn, brings new challenges and new opportunities to demonstrate the resilience that defines human adaptation to extreme conditions. Children sleep pressed between adults whose bodies provide the warmth that keeps circulation flowing through small fingers and toes, most vulnerable to the cold that seeps through stone walls, despite every effort to seal gaps and create barriers against the wind that never stops testing the defenses of human shelter. The arrangement of sleeping bodies reflects generations of learning about how shared warmth multiplies individual heat production, while creating microclimates of survival within the larger challenge of maintaining life when outside temperatures drop to levels that would kill exposed humans within hours. The clay vessels that line cottage walls stand as monuments to human ingenuity and the foresight that transforms seasonal abundance into winter sustenance through preservation techniques that concentrate nutrition while extending storage life far beyond what fresh foods could provide. Each container holds the essence of summer's productivity, transformed through salt, smoke, fermentation, and drying into forms that retain life-sustaining properties throughout the months when agricultural production ceases and gathering becomes impossible due to snow cover and frozen ground. Wool blankets heavy with the natural oils that repel moisture while trapping warm air create layers of insulation that demonstrate understanding of how fiber structure and animal adaptation can be harnessed to extend human survival capability into environmental conditions that would otherwise prove fatal to creatures lacking natural protection against extreme cold. The weight of these blankets speaks of the sheep that grew the wool and the hands that processed fleece into fabric through spinning and weaving techniques that maximize insulation properties while creating textiles durable enough to withstand months of constant use. The sound of breathing fills cottage spaces with the gentle rhythm of life persisting, despite conditions that challenge every system in the human body from circulation to digestion, to the basic metabolic processes that generate heat through the conversion of precious food calories into the energy required for survival. Each exhaled breath creates small clouds of vapor that carry away body heat, while providing visible evidence of the life force that continues despite environmental hostility that tests the limits of human endurance. Stories told during evening hours create invisible threads that connect current struggles to the experiences of ancestors who faced similar challenges and developed the techniques that now sustain their descendants through another winter that demands every scrap of accumulated wisdom about fire management, food preservation, tool maintenance, and the social cooperation that transforms individual families into resilient communities capable of collective survival when individual efforts alone would prove insufficient. The knowledge embedded in everyday activities reflects centuries of learning about relationships between human needs and environmental resources, with each technique representing discoveries made by people whose survival depended on understanding how materials behave under extreme conditions and how human physiology responds to the stresses imposed by prolonged exposure to cold, limited nutrition, and the psychological challenges of confinement during months when outdoor activity becomes dangerous or impossible. Water management systems demonstrate sophisticated understanding of how liquid water can be obtained and preserved when natural sources freeze solid, and when the energy required to melt ice and snow must be balanced against limited fuel supplies that serve multiple essential purposes from heating to cooking, to the light production that extends useful working hours into the darkness that dominates winter days in northern climates, where survival requires maximizing productivity during brief periods of daylight. tool maintenance continues throughout winter months, with the careful attention that keeps metal implements sharp and wooden handles secure despite harsh conditions and constant use that would quickly degrade equipment lacking proper care, and the understanding of how different materials respond to temperature extremes and moisture conditions that characterize cottage environments, where humidity from cooking and breathing must be managed to prevent condensation problems while maintaining air quality adequate for human health. The community networks that connect cottage to cottage through informal agreements about resource sharing and mutual assistance create collective security that exceeds what individual families could achieve through isolated efforts, while distributing survival knowledge and capabilities throughout settlements, where cooperation becomes essential for maintaining the population levels necessary to preserve human presence in regions where environmental conditions periodically test community resilience through weather events that challenge even well-prepared groups. Leather goods maintain their protective properties through treatments and maintenance techniques that preserve flexibility while enhancing water resistance and durability under conditions where equipment failure could result in cold injury or death. For individuals whose survival depends on boots, gloves, and outer garments that must function reliably, despite exposure to snow, moisture, and temperature fluctuations that stress materials beyond normal parameters, while requiring continued performance throughout extended winter periods. Food preparation transforms stored ingredients into meals that provide both physical nourishment and psychological comfort during months when dietary variety becomes severely limited, and when the social aspects of shared meals help maintain morale and family bonds despite the stresses imposed by confinement and resource scarcity that characterize winter survival conditions, where every calorie consumed must contribute to maintaining health and working capacity essential for continued survival efforts. The cycle of daily activities creates structure and purpose that helps families maintain psychological stability during periods when survival tasks alone might not provide sufficient meaning and motivation for continued effort. Through conditions that test human endurance and determination, while requiring constant attention to details that determine success or failure in the ongoing struggle to preserve life through environmental extremes that would quickly prove fatal to unprepared individuals lacking knowledge and equipment adequate for extreme weather survival. Fire management continues through the night with techniques that maintain combustion while conserving fuel through banking methods that control oxygen flow and burning rates to provide steady heat output without the rapid fuel consumption that would exhaust wood supplies before spring restoration of normal fuel gathering activities becomes possible again with improving weather conditions and longer daylight hours that permit outdoor work and travel between communities that remain isolated during the most severe winter weather. The accumulated wisdom of generations flows through every aspect of winter survival, from the selection and preparation of foods that retain nutritional value throughout extended storage periods to the construction and maintenance of shelters that provide protection against wind and cold while managing moisture and air quality issues that affect both comfort and health during months of continuous occupancy by multiple family members sharing limited space under conditions that require cooperation and careful resource management for successful survival through extreme environmental conditions. As the deepest part of night settles over the village, the evidence of human adaptation and resilience continues in the steady breathing of sleeping families, the gentle glow of banked fires, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowledge tested through countless winters and proven effective for sustaining life when nature presents its greatest challenges to human survival. The story of winter survival unfolds not in dramatic moments, but in the accumulation of countless small decisions and actions that together create comprehensive systems capable of preserving human life and community through conditions that would seem impossible to overcome without the benefit of accumulated experience and cooperative effort. The village rests now in the embrace of winter's deepest cold, but within each cottage, life continues with the steady persistence that defines human survival. Families sleep secure in shelters warmed by fires, tended with ancient knowledge, surrounded by food preserved through techniques perfected over generations, protected by clothing created from materials processed with understanding born of necessity, and refined through centuries of experience with conditions that demand every resource of human ingenuity and determination. The rhythm of survival beats steadily through the night, marking time with the sound of settling timber, the whisper of wind around sealed doors, and the gentle breathing of people who have learned to thrive in conditions that test every aspect of human adaptation while demonstrating that knowledge, cooperation, and careful preparation provide the foundation for persistence through whatever challenges winter can present to communities determined to preserve human life and culture through the longest, coldest nights that nature can create. The winter story continues in the dreams of sleeping families who rest secure in the knowledge that they possess the skills and resources necessary for survival. While the fires burn low but steady, the food stores remain adequate for the journey ahead, and the community bonds hold strong against isolation and hardship. Tomorrow will bring new challenges and new opportunities to demonstrate the resilience that has carried human settlements through countless winters. But tonight, the village rests in the peace that comes from preparation, knowledge, and the quiet confidence of people who understand that survival depends not on fighting winter, but on learning to live within its embrace with wisdom, cooperation, and respect for the forces that shape human existence in harmony with natural cycles that have governed life on Earth since the beginning of time. As our time in this ancient world comes to a close, you begin to feel yourself gently returning from those stone cottages and snow-covered villages, carrying with you the profound sense of human resilience and ingenuity that has sustained communities through the harshest conditions imaginable. The knowledge of how people survived and thrived using nothing but accumulated wisdom, natural materials, and cooperative spirit creates a deep appreciation for the strength that lies within human adaptation and the power of community bonds forged through shared challenges. The images of families gathered around carefully tended fires, sharing preserved foods and ancient stories, begin to fade like morning mist, but the feeling of that profound human connection to survival and to each other remains vivid in your awareness. You can still sense the weight of wool blankets heavy with natural oils, the warmth radiating from clay vessels filled with life-sustaining provisions, and the quiet satisfaction that comes from understanding how human knowledge and cooperation transform hostile environments into spaces where life not only survives but maintains dignity, culture, and hope through the darkest months. Gently now, you begin to return to your own time and place, bringing with you a deep respect for the generations who developed these survival techniques and passed them down through bloodlines that connect us all to ancestors who faced unimaginable challenges with wisdom, courage, and an unshakable determination to preserve human life and community through whatever conditions nature might present. The story of winter survival becomes part of your own understanding, a reminder of the strength that flows through human history and the ingenuity that emerges when communities face extreme challenges with shared knowledge and mutual support. The village fades into memory now, but the lessons remain clear and powerful. The understanding that survival depends not on individual strength alone, but on the collective wisdom of communities working together with respect for natural forces and deep knowledge of how to live in harmony with environmental cycles that have shaped human existence since the beginning of time. The peace that comes from this understanding settles around you like a warm blanket, providing comfort and security as you return to your own warm, safe space. Feel your body sinking deeper into comfort now, releasing any tension that may have gathered during our journey through those challenging winter landscapes. Your muscles relax naturally as you settle more fully into the softness that supports you, letting go of any effort or alertness that was needed to follow the intricate details of survival and adaptation. The knowledge remains, but the need to actively listen and learn dissolves into peaceful rest as your body recognizes that you are safe, warm, and completely protected from any harsh conditions. Notice how comfortable you are in this moment, surrounded by warmth and security that those medieval families could only dream of during their long winter nights. Your breathing comes easily and naturally, without any need to conserve heat or manage precious resources. The air around you maintains perfect temperature without careful fire tending, and you can rest completely without concern for fuel supplies or food preservation, or any of the countless details that occupied every moment of those survival-focused lives. Allow your shoulders to settle deeper into relaxation, releasing any residual tension from imagining the physical demands of winter survival. Your arms rest heavily and comfortably at your sides, no longer needed for hauling water or splitting wood or tending fires through the night. Your hands lie still and peaceful, free from the constant work of spinning thread or grinding grain, or maintaining the tools that meant the difference between life and death in that harsh but remarkable world we have left behind. Your legs sink into complete rest, no longer required to carry you through deep snow or across frozen ground in search of essential resources. Your feet rest in perfect warmth, protected and comfortable without layers of wool stockings or leather boots designed to preserve circulation in deadly cold. Every part of your body recognizes the profound comfort and security of your current environment, allowing muscles to release completely into the support that surrounds you with gentle, consistent warmth. The weight of survival knowledge settles peacefully in your mind, not as burden, but as profound appreciation for the strength and wisdom of human communities who developed such sophisticated understanding of how to preserve life under extreme conditions. This knowledge becomes part of your deeper awareness, contributing to a sense of connection to human history and resilience that provides comfort and security, even as it fades into the peaceful background of approaching sleep. Your breathing slows naturally now, each breath deeper and more relaxed than the last, carrying away any remaining alertness or active attention that was focused on following the details of winter survival techniques and community cooperation. The rhythm of your breath becomes as steady and reliable as those carefully banked fires that sustained families through countless winter nights, providing the foundation for rest and restoration that prepares you for peaceful sleep. Each exhale releases a little more of the conscious mind's engagement with stories and survival strategies, while each inhale brings deeper calm and the growing awareness that you can rest completely without concern for anything beyond this moment of perfect comfort and security. Your breath becomes a bridge between the active engagement with those fascinating survival techniques and the approaching peace of sleep that requires no effort, no planning, no careful resource management or community cooperation. The gentle rhythm of breathing creates its own peaceful pattern now, slower and more relaxed with each cycle, carrying you naturally toward the rest that your body craves after this journey through such detailed and complex survival knowledge. There is nothing you need to remember, nothing you need to plan or prepare, no resources to conserve or techniques to practice. Simply the natural flow of breath that supports complete relaxation and the approaching embrace of peaceful sleep. Feel how each breath brings deeper peace and comfort, washing through your body like gentle waves that carry away any remaining tension or active thinking about the remarkable survival techniques we have explored together. Your mind begins to rest as completely as your body, no longer needing to process complex information about food preservation or fire management or community cooperation. The knowledge settles into peaceful storage while your conscious awareness drifts toward the welcoming darkness of sleep. Let sleep come gently now, without any effort or intention on your part. There is no need to fight it or encourage it. Simply allow the natural progression from relaxed awareness toward the deeper rest that your body and mind are ready to embrace. The transition happens as naturally as those seasonal cycles that governed life in the medieval village, following patterns that require no conscious control or management from you. Your body knows exactly how to move from wakefulness into sleep, just as those survival communities knew how to move through the cycles of daily activities that sustained them through harsh conditions. Trust in this natural process that needs no guidance or effort from your conscious mind, allowing sleep to approach in its own time and its own way, while you rest in complete comfort and security. The warmth that surrounds you now requires no fire tending, no careful fuel management, no banking of coals through the night. It simply exists as a constant, reliable comfort that supports your rest without any attention or effort from you. This security allows complete letting go, complete trust in the environment that holds you safely, while sleep approaches with gentle inevitability. No need to monitor or manage anything now. No survival tasks that require attention through the night. No community responsibilities or resource conservation that demands your awareness. Simply the peaceful progression towards sleep that comes naturally when body and mind are ready to rest completely, supported by comfort and security that requires nothing from you except the willingness to let go and allow sleep to embrace you gently. The story fades into peaceful memory now, leaving only the deep comfort of understanding human resilience and the security of your own warm, safe space. Sleep comes as naturally as breath, as inevitably as the cycle of day and night, carrying you into rest that restores and renews without any effort or attention required from your conscious mind. Simply allow the gentle embrace of sleep to enfold you now, trusting in the natural process that brings rest and restoration, peaceful dreams and the deep satisfaction of a mind and body ready to let go completely into the welcoming darkness that holds only comfort, security, and the promise of peaceful rest through the gentle hours until morning brings its own natural awakening.